is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Jetty has a seam, and Jetty to the 20, Jetty to the 10, Jetty to the end zone! Touchdown, Boise State!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Driving into the end zone, Jennings with the hook up to Jordan Hudson for the much-needed touchdown. An SMU answer, and they've got the lead back.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Levin looking middle, throws, end zone, and what a catch! Tyson, touchdown! And I think he got that foot down.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Second down, they'll go a little more conservative. They'll tell that to Bryson Washington! Touchdown! 51 yards.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. We got basketballs on the floor. Tournaments, of course, going on in various beautiful places around the country with Thanksgiving around the corner. Baylor basketball, both teams are in the Bahamas. But it's football season, of course, the stretch drive to the last 2 weeks of the regular season, conference championship games, and eventually who's going to be the 12, who are the 12 that will play for college football's national championship, and so much more to get to. Good afternoon. We'll hear from Nicole Auerbach from NBC Sports, who wrote that column yesterday about hypothetical games are too much a part of the discussion of who should be ranked and where. Also today, Brian Howell, big day today in Boulder. We'll get to that in a minute when it comes to the future Buffaloes. And then also because of their game coming up against Kansas, a lot of media covering Boulder today, and more on that in a moment. We'll hear a little clippet from Dave Aranda on the Big 12 and coaching. His thoughts about that. Craig's off the radar. Paul's stopped by. Mickey Spagnola, and he'll join us today too. So here is the graphic of all the teams who are left in the Big 12 that have a chance to play for the championship. There are 16 teams, and 9 of them remain alive. Arizona State, Colorado, and BYU right now are in the best position, some better than others, but there's mathematically, by the way, unless something pops up like the Big Ten 3 days later, Oregon clinched a Big Ten championship game. That's where we are. The Big 12 still in contention, and it is pretty interesting with 16 teams. Do you feel like it's because we've discussed this, that not everybody plays everybody, so sometimes you just get eliminated by that? Why are there still 9 with just 2 weeks to go?
Yeah, this is one of those things to say, like, hey, this is how good the league is, but the only chance that most of these teams have would be to win out, get help, and then obviously win the Big 12 championship game to get that automatic. Well, and then if you've got a 4-loss team, if Army's got 1 loss, do they, do that? Like, so this is the Big 12 trying to promote itself, and I get that. But look, the teams that are still in contention are Iowa State, Colorado, Arizona State, and BYU. That's who's in contention right now. And Iowa State is hanging on to the bottom rung. Okay, so Arizona State and BYU will clear up a lot of things, and a lot of this will be cleared up this week just by the fact that games are played and you only have 1 game left to do anything.
If you're 2 back now, you're in it in some way. If you're 2 back after this weekend, you're done.
Yeah, so...
Oh, yeah, there's only 1 game left.
Yeah, there's one game. So this is one of those things. It's 4 teams that have a legit shot. This is a cool graphic and all, but, it's not like the absolute fact of the matter.
I mean, it's mathematically true.
Yeah.
It's just not all that likely, and it's really not all that important. But I guess if it has 9 fan bases feeling like they have a chance heading into the final couple of weeks, then that's what you're going for here, and just to promote the competitive balance. But this is what happens when you have no teams that are undefeated. It's what happens when you have, just a league that's built on basically like-minded and like-built teams. it's the same team, just a little bit of a, an advantage here and there, basically seeing itself in the mirror nearly every week for, 10 weeks. So, or 9 weeks. So you're going to have a lot of parity. You're going to have a lot of teams beating up on each other. You're going to have situations where you have a bunch of teams with 3 losses like you do now, 6 of those. You got, 4 of them, 3 of them with 4 losses. You got 2 with 2 losses, 2 with 1 losses. So, yeah, I mean, there's just no clear-cut team now that BYU lost, and it's a bit of a mess, but it's what Paul said basically. I mean, it's BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State. That's really the race, and I think BYU and Colorado can all but clinch it this weekend, depending on the results. I know Iowa State's results big. If Utah were to upset them, then that kind of clears the way for this to be a lot more clear out of this weekend, but I don't think many of us are anticipating that, although Iowa State hasn't played exceptionally well, so who knows? Maybe Utah could go pull an upset. That's what would really kind of clear this mess up, though. Otherwise, if BYU wins and Colorado wins and all of that, then I think you're still staring straight at them. But
I thought there was a chance at the end of this weekend that BYU and
Iowa
Colorado,
State upsets Utah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But otherwise, I think there's another week of, there's technically you could lose this game and that. But, yeah, I think the clearest path – and it was tough because I was looking through articles last night, and there's 2 published from the same day, and one of them says you can do this and this happens, and the other says something different. It's like, all right, so not even the reporters know exactly what the tiebreaker scenarios are.
Well, neither did an entire
The Big 12 only put this out and said, well, we're not going to comment on every tiebreaker. No, but they put it out and they said we're not going to comment on every tiebreaker to reporters who asked. And they just put this out and said we're only going to talk about those who technically still have a chance, but they didn't get into the details or the depths of the exact, possibilities. But, yeah, I think the clearest thing is that Colorado and BYU win this weekend, and they'll pretty much, set themselves up to close this bad boy on out and make their way to Arlington.
Yeah, they gave out a note earlier this week about how clear-cut it could be at the end of this weekend, but still things have to happen and not just straight-up wins against the teams at the very top or losses either. Arizona State will be hosting BYU. We've heard from their assistant coach in Brian Carrington. We also, of course, today, BYU, as they go through their workouts, try to get themselves back off the mat after losing that game and could not convert late against Kansas last week, at which they'd done multiple times. That game in Tempe is sold out. I love Sun Devil Stadium. One of my best, favorite ever memories was watching Nebraska win the national championship there. But also, been there when I was a kid, watched a few games when they had players like some of the great Hall of Fame names in Arizona State history, Jerry Smith, Charlie Taylor, among others. That game is sold out. One of the kids in that picture, young men, is our friend C.J. Fight, the defensive lineman from Tatum, Texas. There is a sold out officially with that game, and that's great. That's a pretty large stadium, Paul. Craig, you think like 70,000 or so, 70, 75,000? Yeah. It's hosted Super Bowls, national championships, and good for Arizona State to have that kind of interest.
Yeah, nowhere close to 70,000. This is 53,000, what I'm
really?
seeing on here. Yeah, 53,599 for Mountains America Stadium.
They hosted Super Bowls.
Yeah, but that was back in the day where it was it's been a while since they have. At Sunday.
Cowboys and Steelers might have been the last time they did it.
Yeah, that was in the 90s when 53,000 was like about what you do. Yeah.
But they are sold out. Good for them, because that's not something they've done much at Sun Devil Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you'd expect for a game like this. It would be bigger news, I think, if they weren't sold out, but still it's a good thing to have out there and to promote and to accomplish, because you just never know. But, yeah, you would hope that would be the case, because I don't know how many bigger games they've seen here of late. I know they've seen people roll in who are ranked highly, but I don't know that they've been good themselves when those teams have rolled in ranked highly, not to this extent. So, yeah, this is a big game, and I would expect a raucous crowd, and that's what Kenny Dillingham's been, in some cases, almost begging for at times this year. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that he's getting the support, and they certainly have earned that.
They did have over 70,000 for almost 15 or 20 years. They at one time had 74,865 from 89, 90, and 91. When they hosted a national championship game, they were over 73,000, then started to downsize. and now where they are today, as Craig said, just under 54,000. A lot of media today in Boulder is the Buffaloes are red hot and obviously getting a lot of attention with the Shedeur and Travis Hunter, among others, and a lot of players. The receivers are all really good, including Horn, Wester, and Shepard. Today, Travis Hunter was asked about the NFL draft, and he basically did confirm today. That's from Brandon Marcello. Yes, that's definitely for sure. Somebody followed up on that. Is that definitely for sure? He's thinking about it. No, he will after the season's over. No surprise whatsoever be entering the NFL draft, and he might be doing it as a member, of course, of the Heisman Trophy classes.
Yeah, he might. He has a good shot at getting drafted number 1 overall, depending on who has that pick. He's all right, I'll just throw it out this way. The Cowboys have potential right now to get that number 1 pick. Right now, they're at number 9. But if they keep losing, and they have been the worst team in the NFL the last month, if they keep losing, would you put it past Jerry to take Travis Hunter, number 1 overall?
No, I wouldn't. I just don't. Yeah. Does that do them any good?
I mean, it doesn't hurt. Like, taking the best player available doesn't ever hurt anybody.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Well, he made it official today as far as with that particular quote. Not just Brandon, but many, but saw that first with Brandon in his feed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the Cowboys needs rank or whatever, but yeah, best player available. He'll certainly be that on most draft boards, and I think he's the favorite for the Heisman Trophy right now based on the odds that I've seen and just kind of the way the momentum's playing up in his direction. So he's a great player. He's going to be missed in Boulder for sure, but they're obviously, as we're going to talk about, starting to load up for next year. But yeah, he's been great and could very well bring a Heisman Trophy back to Boulder and therefore the Big 12. But I mean, this is the least surprising news ever is that he's going to the NFL draft.
Well, and I would like to compliment him on not doing the whole, well, I don't know, we'll see how it plays out thing. Dude, we know.
Yeah. Shedeur Sanders knows about Travis Hunter. Today, when asked about the Heisman Trophy, he should win it. That's it. That's really it. I think he's deserving of it. It's between me and him, and I would want him to get it. He does a lot of amazing things and things that haven't been done before. He obviously is a special talent, and there it is from the quarterback that throws in the ball, and sometimes Travis gives it back to the quarterback with what he can do on defense too. Not a surprise. I do think it's interesting. It's between me and him.
No, he said if it's between.
If it's between me and him, because I wonder if both of them. I doubt both of them will be in New York City. I think you'll see.
I don't think Shedeur
Cam
has a chance
Ward.
Right now.
I think you'll see Travis Hunter. You'll see Ashton Genty and
Dylan Gabriel. Like Shedeur's not going to be in New York for the ceremony.
No, he's not. Yeah. No, he's not.
No.
Also, I am. Everyone knows I'm not like a big fan of UT, and sometimes it's as much the fans as anything else. But they're really good. And I have said that from the beginning. Steve Sarkisian has become one of my favorite coaches. We got a chance to interview him. It's been a while since the Big 12 Media Days in 2022. But I liked the way he talks. I like what he's done to a program that was, I don't know, too soft or whatever it was, dysfunctional. Here's what he said.
I couldn't disagree anymore. Lane and I both know we've been in the SEC long enough. It's a heck of an accomplishment to be an SEC champion on the football field, almost as much as it is being a national champion. I think Nick Saban can attest to that. Kirby Smart can attest to that. So we're all striving to be SEC champs and would love that opportunity. And then if you can go win that game, then you do get that bye, and then you don't play until the end of December. And so the key to the drill is when you get into that game is finishing the job and trying to win a championship to celebrate that with your team and then earn a first-round bye so you don't have to play till the end of December or early January.
So when I saw that, I listened to it. I reached out to Ian Fitzsimmons, who's a guest of the show, and I said, hey, can we use that audio? I love what he said. Everything about it. It wasn't like, well, it might be better if we're not. He said it. I love it. I love what Sarkisian's done with what he's brought to the University of Texas.
Lane Kiffin is also, by saying that he's accomplishing two things. By saying, look, it's not the end of the world if we don't get into the SEC title game because we feel like we deserve to make the playoff. He's also setting it up for the small pocket of fans to be like, well, there he goes, not in the SEC title game again. What are we paying all this guy for? He's like, well, it's not that important anymore.
I'm glad that Sarkisian, when they're being asked about Lane Kiffin's comments, actually, back to the championship game and its importance. I think everybody knows that Lane Kiffin is trying to worm his way into what's best for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. And their best argument right now is that the championship game shouldn't matter. So I think if he were playing for it and he was the favorite to be in it, I don't know that his opinion would be the same. I think Lane's doing what's best for Ole Miss and perception, but I love that Steve Sarkisian's like, no, if you want to win this SEC, go out and win the SEC championship. The SEC championship game is important. I think when you start talking about devaluing of regular season, here's a prime example of it. You got a coach who's like, no, let's get rid of championship games so that we can just get as many teams in and not really decide a champion at the end of the year. That's where maybe you're getting watered down by the expanded playoff. But I agree with Sarkisian. I understand the argument against SEC championship games. I just need to hear it from more people other than Lane Kiffin for it to mean something, because I think he's got a personal reason for feeling that way as of this moment. But, it will be interesting to see what does happen with conference title games because of the money involved and the playoff stakes. But I appreciate Sarkisian's approach here.
Who would ever want to admit that they don't want to play for a championship? I know it's not the national championship, but whether it's the Mountain West Conference Championship or it's the SEC championship, I don't want to see any of those things devalued at all, even though eventually you want to be a part of the 12. By playing in it and winning it, you're in it. And by playing in it and playing well, if you have the ability to be in that game, you're still probably, with that conference, going to be in it, even though there's a scramble of 5 or 6 teams that are trying to get into that mix of how many the SEC gets into the championship playoff.
And he's talking about the reward of getting a bye versus getting knocked out. Lane, you're full of it, because the loser of the SEC title game is not getting knocked out of the playoff. That's not going to happen.
It's not like last year when Georgia got knocked out.
It's just simply not going to happen. There's not division. So you're not going to have like the East champ with 4 losses, which was never the case really anyways, sneak in and they both championship teams are going to be in the playoff. So that argument is already rubbish. You're not getting knocked out in any way by playing in this game. Now, you might lose a first-round bye, but that's what he's talking about is like, does the reward of a bye outweigh the risk of getting left out? Well, first of all, that's BS, because there's no risk of getting left out playing in the championship game in the SEC. 0. So, yeah, you could lose a bye, but don't lose the game. Like, at some point, all of this, like, well, what happens if so-and-so loses the second and third and fourth? Guys, don't lose games. What the hell are we talking about? It's like BYU of, well, if we lose this game, we're not guaranteed a bye. Don't lose the game then. That's, I'm sorry, but that's just how it's supposed to work. Losing dings you. You don't get safety losses where, well, we get a loss that's just a mulligan, and then we get another loss, and it's like, depending on where you are, you get one, you maybe get a couple. But, I think that's a ridiculous straw man argument that he's presenting there, because it favors what would best favor Ole Miss, and that's all that is.
Well, look, if Ole Miss loses their third game and it's in the title game, which they're not even in right now, they wouldn't be one of the – right now it's, A&M or Texas are the ones who have the only one loss in the conference. So they're not even in it. I do think that Tennessee and Ole Miss have – and maybe even Alabama to some regard because of their losses, to take a third loss in that championship game because of the Kentucky and Vanderbilt and those losses.
Alabama would never say we don't want to be a part of it.
No. What I'm saying is, when Craig says both teams are getting in, I do think a team with a third loss, if their other 2 losses aren't like Georgia's losses, if it's Ole Miss and they've got one to Kentucky who's under 500 and going to be under 500, then that third loss might knock you out.
They're the second best team in the SEC. I get what you're saying, but you're playing the championship game. You're not East and West anymore. It's the 2 best teams in the league. So I get what you're saying of you get that third loss, but if you go get blown out in the SEC championship game, don't get blown out.
Yeah.
At some
and
point,
then if you do, maybe you don't deserve
exactly
to be
right. So at some point, if you go to the SEC championship game, you get blown out, and you have your third loss. Well, maybe you didn't deserve it, but I think most of the time, anybody who's that second best team heading into that game is going to have one hell of a benefit of a doubt, and they're going to have a pretty great chance of being in the playoff regardless. But all these questions, all these hypotheticals that are getting thrown out there, it's a lot of people trying to wrap bubble wrap around their teams, and it is college football where we were at 1 loss dings you and can really hurt you, and 2 losses pretty much eliminates you, and now we're trying to go like, well, yeah, let's just not play championship games so we don't avoid that. It's just, come on, man. Go play your championship game.
They will never not because of the money that's involved in that unless they come up with some way that the college football playoff adds even more billions into the mix. We will get to the news, by the way, for Colorado in just a moment about today and a highly ranked player, but a couple other notes. Here is, speaking of Texas, the top-rated defenses right now, top-rated defenses as far as yards allowed: Texas, Ohio State, Indiana. You know, you hear a lot about Rourke, the Cignetti, and the offense and whatever. And, yes, I understand that perhaps their schedule is a lot. I don't even want to say that because it's not fair because other teams on this list could have the same thing said. Penn State, Army. And then here are the teams, the top-rated defenses from the Big 12. BYU, Utah, Houston. They host Baylor this week. Kansas State, Iowa State, and there's Arizona State, the Sun Devils, in the top 50 at number 44. All right.
I mean, the Indiana schedule thing is absolutely fair. I mean, it's absolutely fair, but we will see them play Ohio State this weekend.
Yeah, and we'll know, right? Then we'll know whether if they lose 20-17 or get beat 48-0. But what about the schedule for anybody else on that list? Can we question who they have played?
I mean, we can what about anything, we can what about anything. But I think that, the point is that, yeah, Indiana's schedule is fair. But, yeah, can we what about, well, so is Houston's or whatever? Sure, we can do that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's true about Indiana. So, I get your point that others have softer schedules, too.
It's true about Texas, and it's also true about
who
else.
It's but still, it's still true about Indiana. So
my point was this. I'm understanding where you're going. I'm saying is that everyone talks about their offense. Their defense is ranked 3rd in the country.
Yeah, no, look, they're plenty good. I don't like the talk this week about how, okay, they just need to take their lump against Ohio State and all that because they can hang. They can absolutely hang, and their defense and Ohio State's defense, this game, I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than we anticipate. I do also think that, everybody's talking about Indiana's schedule. Okay, Ohio State has a slightly better schedule than them, having played Oregon and having played Penn State, but most of their schedule's the same. It's the same caliber of teams. Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, Oregon. And Oregon playing Boise State in the non-con actually makes them better, but none of those 3 teams, Penn State, Ohio State, or Indiana, had as good of a non-con as Oregon did. So, let's not pretend if you're going to say that about Indiana's schedule, outside of a game with Oregon and Penn State, whose offense isn't that great, who are we talking about them playing?
I agree with you, and I'm not really into the whole anti-Indiana thing, but we're talking about a team that's played 2 top 5 teams already and is about to play a 3rd, and they went 1-1 and lost by 1 point to the other, and the other team we're talking about is just now playing their first-ranked team of the entire season, and there's 2 games to play. So that's the difference. You're about to play your 3rd top 5 team. This team's about to play their first-ranked team, period, with 2 games to play. That's a pretty big difference. Yeah. But, your point stands.
My point is that I wasn't talking about Ohio State compared to Indiana. I was talking about other teams on that list. You don't hear as much about that as you do Indiana. My point is you hear a lot about Indiana. Yeah, they score a lot of points. They are also 3rd in the country. I don't care who you're playing in this day and age of football. You're the 3rd-ranked team in the country defensively.
Yeah, I'm talking about Paul's point about who Indiana's played.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just Ohio State, yeah, but – if you want to drill, my point was, if you want to drill down into it, the Big Ten's all play the same kind of schedule.
Somebody asked me on a DM in the Twitter, who has Texas played as far as offensively? Did you know that Arkansas is the 11th ranked team in the country on offense?
Yeah, they didn't give it many points.
Yeah, 20-10. Yeah. I didn't know that they were that high, but they're the number 11th ranked team in the country when it comes to total offense. Now, Terrell Bernard, former Baylor star, All-American, named the AFC's Defensive Player of the Week. A beautiful picture of him. He sealed the game with an interception, the Defensive Player of the Week with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, he was fantastic against the Chiefs this week. Not only interception, but he was just all over the field. And not surprising. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL right now. Maybe he doesn't people don't know him like the others. Of course, linebacker is maybe kind of a forgotten position in the modern NFL, like the way it used to be. There's not the Jack Lamberts and Lawrence Taylors of the world. Everybody's kind of like a combo rush end or whatever. But for a pure linebacker, he's one of the top 5 in the league, in my opinion. Not surprised by that either, because he's, we saw it here, what he's got, especially sideline to sideline, and what he does.
Two different players that played at Baylor, both he and Petrie, basically ended games with plays during turnovers, with Petrie blowing up that fumble by Guyton that he picked up, the offensive lineman from the Cowboys. And Colorado today picked up a 5-star quarterback in Juju Lewis. He committed on the Pat McAfee show, and the 5-star quarterback has committed to Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes. And so they get their quarterback of the future.
And we have the video if you want to see it. It's the one he put on Twitter.
Julian Lewis.
Julian Lewis.
My name is Julian Lewis.
The natural ability that he has.
And he looks to be the next big thing.
We all know about the 5-star quarterback.
He is one of the most accurate quarterbacks.
The ascension of Juju Lewis at Colorado would be something else.
This fan base, man, I'm telling you, they're juiced there.
Viral photo of Julian Lewis and Shador Sanders
handing over the keys to the Colorado Kingdom.
As Shador Sanders leaves to go to the next level, the next legend at Colorado arrives.
They told me bust down my AP, perfect time. Perfect time. I stay shining.
Colorado gets Lewis. USC, who had Lewis, got Longstreet, who was committed to Texas A&M as a highly ranked quarterback as well. That all happening in the last few days.
Yeah, and I think it's a nice little fit for Colorado. I think he certainly has that, prime Coach Prime player swagger to him. And is he going to start next year? Maybe he's like Dylan Raiola, but they're probably going to get in the portal for a rental as well, I would think.
Well, I mean, it's a surefire sign that Deion's probably back next year. I think it's the biggest thing is that Deion, we've been wondering about what his future holds, just because you never know with Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter leaving and all the success they're having. You think you'd like to build on that, but who's to say when the era is changing the way that it will? But he said the quote about the kickstand and being in Boulder the other day, and now you've got this big quarterback commit in Julian Lewis. So I think that's a pretty surefire sign that he's going to be around, and that's my big takeaway from this. Also that Colorado landed a really big fish, and I don't know when he plays, how quickly he becomes a starter, all that kind of jazz. I really don't think that's important now, because today's the day to just celebrate the fact that they landed him after a really long pursuit, and it's just another piece to build on for that program as a whole. So I think that's good news for, obviously, Colorado. It's great news for Deion, great news for the Big 12 as well, that he's going to probably be sticking around based on this. So I think that's the most telling thing. But also, they got a hell of a player, and we'll see how quickly he's able to go and showcase that and how they go about replacing Shador next year.
All right, when we come back, NBC sports columnist Nicole Auerbach on This Week in College Football, the latest standings. She had a column out about it the day after the standings came out on Tuesday evening, and this is 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. Join us for our Black Friday sale, where over $16 million in inventory is on sale right now. This month only, get a 24 F-150 for under $500 a month, or a 24 Bronco, only $470 a month. Selection and save all month long at Bird Colgan Ford during our Black Friday sales event. Visit us anytime at bkford.com or come by and experience better at BK Ford.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. Forever we'll be singing like, oh, I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I wanna live. This is how I wanna live. Forever we'll be singing like, oh, I'll never get used to this.
Our communities are facing unprecedented times. At Boozer's Jewelers, we care about you and your family. If you're like me, your home has unwanted or unused jewelry lying around. They can have value, and that means we can turn that jewelry into instant cash. This is a great way to get the most value from your unwanted jewelry. At Boozer's Jewelers, we buy all kinds of unused jewelry. So give us a call and let us give you peace of mind and cash for your unwanted or unused jewelry.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Another So-So Pizza from So-So's Pizza? But wait, there's Marco's! Our new triple pepperoni Magnifico pizza is stacked with classic, crispy cupped, and new bold shredded pepperoni. It's triple the flavor, and only at Marco's. Just $11.99.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Here we go, this 3 o'clock hour. At 4 o'clock today, Brian Howell, who covers Colorado for the Daily Camera in Boulder, he will join us at 4. Also today, we will have Off the Radar and also the Top 5, which is every Tuesday and Thursday. Those two segments, and Paul's Top 5 is every day to close out our show. Also, a note, when Dave Aranda was asked about the scramble at the top, if you want to call it that, of the Big 12, and then he discusses the coaches within the Big 12, his comment on that when we get to the 4 o'clock hour at around 4:25. Got it? Nicole Auerbach, we appreciate your time. NBC national columnist, covers college football with us. Craig and Paul, David Smoak on 365 Sports. Nicole, you were very vocal after the standings came out on Tuesday and about hypotheses and hypotheticals, etc. How was the reaction to what you said? Because we all, I think, across the board pretty much agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody who doesn't root for a team in the SEC feels that way. I think that a lot of people have been very tired of hearing that, you know, losses can be excused based on a strength of schedule, which, by the way, like, strength of schedule metrics are calculated differently for each different outlet in different places. But, you know, it's kind of like the idea, like, I saw somebody arguing about, like, Missouri still being in the top 25, which shocked me. That they had a strong strength of schedule. Well, but they got blown out in the 3 games that they lost, right? So at some point, like, drawing a tough schedule on paper shouldn't be the number one thing anyone says about you. It should be how you played against the teams on your schedule. And I just, you know, it was just frustrating to see Indiana become the flashpoint for all of this when they have a big game against Ohio State left. I mean, they have a game that will make or break their season, and we don't have to get hypothetical about that. I think it's hard for people to hear when, you know, you grow up in a region or you root for a certain team and you believe that the teams in that area are always the best of the best when, you know, maybe there isn't an elite team in the SEC this year. They're all kind of beating up on each other a little bit. And even Georgia, a team that I think we believe in the coaching staff and the talent there were about 6 weeks where Carson Beck was playing really poorly and they didn't look very good. So I just think that those things need to matter, and that I thought that after last year with what happened to Florida State, winning all their games and not getting into the playoffs, you know, we were told that wouldn't happen again. But a lot of the conversations and kind of the vitriol against teams like Indiana or Penn State, and surprisingly not Texas, because their schedule is very similar as well. You know, a lot of it feels the same as what happened last year in the conversations about Florida State versus Alabama for that last spot. I think ultimately it kind of comes down to the idea of deserving versus best. And I just don't believe that we should just pick the best teams based on, you know, who has the most 5-star recruits or how we thought about them back in August.
Nicole, you said something in there. The SEC doesn't have an elite team. They may know that. They'll never admit that. I think the party line has been, we have 6 elite teams, and our elite teams are so elite it doesn't matter when they lose. Is that part of it because they just won't admit that, like, hey, you know, maybe this year isn't the year for the SEC like the past years have been?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not admitting that. And again, I mean, I'm not saying that like a team from the SEC is not going to win it all. You know, we haven't gone through the 12-team playoff yet, but you know, there's additional games, the wear and tear, the teams that are most talented and have the most depth are going to have the best shot to win it all. So I'm not saying an SEC team won't win it, but I do think when you get down to like the 5th and 6th best teams, it's just kind of an interesting conversation to have, because we're already looking at brackets for the last few weeks now, and basically all season that projects 4 SEC teams in. I feel like if you're the 5th or 6th best team in your own conference, hard to argue that, like, oh my God, you have to be in the bracket to determine the national champion, because you could be the best team in the entire country when you're 5th or 6th in your own league. It's just like, that doesn't compute to me.
It just means more, I guess, Nicole. It just means more. It's all I can think of. But you mentioned Indiana, and they are in Columbus this weekend for that monster showdown. I know there's a lot of conversation about if they lose, are they still in and all that, but what do you think about just their chances straight up against the Buckeyes, and what do you think about just the story building there in the Big Ten in Columbus this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game that we've all had circled for a few weeks now. I think once we got past the point of, hey, Indiana is a great little story, and they're like, actually, you know, they're pretty good, and they're pretty much crushing everybody they play, except Michigan. Of course, that was a much tighter game. So I can't wait to see it play out. I do understand, you know, why Ohio State is a big favorite here. It's by far the most talented team that Indiana is facing. I've seen a lot of people kind of frame it as like the no stars versus the 5 stars. Completely true. All of that is accurate. And Indiana did struggle against the one team in Michigan that has dudes that are going to play on Sunday. That defensive front is for real, even though they're having a disappointing season. So I'm going to be fascinated to see, you know, how this one gets started. Ohio State tends to start slow in some of their games. Can Indiana, you know, kind of jump into the game that way and stay and hang around? Curtis Rourke, I think, is really good. I could see him, you know, making an NFL team and sticking around in that league as a backup quarterback for a long time. He's really efficient, really accurate. But I mean, you know, how are they going to, you know, protect him and try to run the ball? What is their defensive front going to be able to do against Ohio State, which there is an interesting dynamic here with their starting center going down and out for the rest of the year. Second significant offensive lineman to go down for them. Does that create an opportunity for Indiana's pass rush and some ability there for the defense to disrupt the game? So I think there's pathways for this thing to be close, for it to be interesting. And I think, you know, I probably fall in the camp of people who say, you know, that they probably do need to have a competitive showing in this game if they lose to stay in the CFP race. So I'd love to see it be a close game. I would love to see us learn a lot about Indiana and about Ohio State by this being a tight one. But yeah, if it becomes a blowout in one direction, it would certainly be Ohio State. Just the amount of talent that they've had, you know, start to finish. You talked about the $20 million that went into the NIL to keep and to build this roster. So fascinating matchup. I love that it is going to be November 23rd, and Indiana is in the biggest game of the day.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it might end up being even a better story. What they've done is maul people. There are 4 of the top 5 teams in America as far as the rankings, not the standings, the college football standings, who are from the Big Ten. With Oregon, of course, part of that mix. Ohio State, Penn State are old guard, especially Ohio State, and Indiana is in the mix too. When you look at the Big Ten, they have 4 wins. Those 4 teams have 4 wins. They're 4-2 against teams ranked inside the Associated Press. Who of those 4 do you feel like, if there's someone that shouldn't be there, who would it be? Would it be Penn State or Indiana?
I mean, I would put in Penn State there right now, and I would do this for one reason. I mean, I think that Penn State is a very good football team, but they had one game and they lost it, right? And that was going to be their resume, boosting their signature win, the anchor of their resume. So I am a little confused at how high they are ranked without any great signature wins. It's the same thing I feel about Texas as well. I mean, I think they're good teams, and I don't mean to say that they're not. And they have played, decent teams. But with the way that the committee evaluates and what they tell us they consider significant markers and resumes, it's like top 25 wins, like against the teams that they put in their top 25. And so it's just confusing. Like, I still don't understand, why Georgia is 7 spots behind Texas and why they're so different just based on 1 losses versus 2 losses when there was a significant result between the two and Georgia has 2 top 20 wins. So I put Penn State in that same category where, and it's the way the schedule fell, that they had one big game and they didn't win it. But it feels like they're getting a lot of credit for it being a good loss, whereas other teams were kind of like holding them to account for, actually having those big wins that are anchoring the resume. So Penn State would be that one for me of those teams. And I also just think Indiana has been more consistent across the board. But that could certainly change depending on how we see Indiana play Ohio State, a team that we already saw Penn State go against.
Nicole, what are your thoughts on, when we've talked about the excellent teams in this league, but Michigan, you mentioned them a second ago, and they still have dudes on how does Sharon Moore get there with whiffing on evaluating the 3 quarterbacks that they had on the roster and not just going, we might as well get somebody else in here to try to drive the ship that still has some really good players on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fascinating off season for him. And, there's obviously, been a lot of news about, recruiting and efforts to flip a specific quarterback. But I think that this is going to be the big test, right? Because the coaching change happened so late last year. Michigan was also in the mix of, the CFP race and fighting and planning ahead to a semifinal. And then the championship game, which obviously you could, sign a new quarterback. You could work through some of that stuff during December. But, J.J. McCarthy hadn't officially declared and there was other stuff going on. So I give them a little bit of a pass. And honestly, a lot of that falls on Jim Harbaugh as well, because this would have been his quarterback situation had he not left for the NFL. So that's why I think that this offseason, from the day the season ends onward, is all on Sharon Moore. He can make staffing changes if he needs to. He can approach recruiting differently, talent evaluation differently, but he doesn't have to do it in a compressed time frame right at the end of a national championship run into, half a staff leaving to go to the NFL. So that's why I think, it's hard to evaluate and how much is on his fault and his shoulders versus, his offensive coordinator versus Harbaugh versus, other talent evaluators on the roster or on the staff. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and wait and see what he does this offseason in the portal and with high school recruiting.
Nicole, I know that the Big 12 is not top of mind for most people, but it is a league right now that, has a very interesting title race shaping up. At the same time, probably some concerns as far as the postseason goes. How concerned do you think the Big 12 should be about the CFP after BYU took that loss? And what stands out to you about the league, if anything, from this season so far?
Well, I mean, this weekend, 2 monster games that will be taking place at the same time, which I think is awesome. And I think that the Big 12 has some of the best stories in sport. I still think Indiana is probably number 1, but Colorado 2, Arizona State 3, with the remarkable turnarounds that we've seen from them. And I think that adds something to these matchups, especially, with Kansas knocking off 2 top 20 teams in the past 2 weeks. And then BYU bounced back up against a team that basically the entire country realized, has had this remarkable turnaround. The country got to know Kenny Dillingham if they weren't aware of him yet, all in the past week. So much of attention and interest and stuff is storylines, and these 2 matchups certainly have them. And I think it's going to be awesome and close games as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be a little bit concerned. I mean, we've been talking about for weeks that the Big 12 was tracking towards only getting 1 team in, just the champion. And the ACC kind of there too. They're a little bit better positioned with where Miami fell to after its loss, and with SMU around there as well. But it's hard to get a full read on it. I know some people freak out about seeing BYU in that number 4 seed and getting that first round bye. That is certainly a possibility, but we just don't know how the committee is going to handle, these results from this weekend, or what it would mean, like let's say Colorado goes out and wins the Big 12 championship, and the series of teams that they would play, how the committee would evaluate those wins, how what their ceiling could be from a ranking perspective. It's hard to guess. It's hard to estimate that without seeing it. But it's definitely a concern that, if you do have some upsets or a 3-loss conference champion, that you could be outside of the top 4 seeds and not get that bye. I do think that is a possibility.
Nicole, in the NFL, if you win a division, you're going to get a home game, and most likely there's a chance you can get a bye in the first round, but you can't get in just because the name on your jersey or how rich the owner might be. You have to earn it. And I use that because it's not the NFL and college football, but now 12 teams getting in. There are 5 qualifiers, automatic, the 5 highest-ranked conference champions. Do you think the push by, it appears to be Greg Sankey, I'm not so sure yet about the Big Ten, that, maybe them too, that they should get multiple automatic qualifiers? Is that a good idea, and why, if you think it is?
Yeah, I think that conversation is going to continue, and I think what we're seeing with the conversation around the 2-loss teams in the SEC, and Greg Sankey himself tweeted out some strength of schedule metrics earlier today. I think they have been laying the groundwork for that. I went to that meeting that the 2 conferences had with their athletic directors in Nashville a couple months ago, and asked, they kept saying, we want to see how the first year of the playoff goes and what, how the committee goes. And I was like, well, what specifically are you looking at? And they're looking at the seeding, they're looking at the selection, the inclusion. But I think that is what they're trying to determine. If they don't think that the committee is giving their teams the respect that they think they deserve based on how they're scheduled, and, that the coaches are going to freak out about taking too many losses and not making the playoff, or not wanting to play for a conference champion, as we've heard Lane Kiffin talk about, I think that's just a nightmare scenario for these conferences. And they like the idea of multiple automatic bids that are not up for, the human element, and not having a selection committee determining that. That would protect your conference championship game, because then you could say both teams that make it get in. Doesn't matter if it's your 3rd loss, 4th loss, whatever it is for the team that loses it. If you get 3 AQs, then you could have a 3rd place game to play into the playoff. Like, they can market and build a lot around that, and it takes away the question of, this uncertainty of having humans on a selection committee making this decision. So I think that, no other sport has the multiple AQs for different leagues like the way that it does, that they're proposing. But I think that they have enough power in an ability to change the format that they could get this done, even if it's unpopular, which I think it would be to almost all college football fans, and certainly those fans in other conferences. But the reason that we need to pay attention to how the losers of the conference championship games are getting treated, and then how, the evaluation of some of the SEC teams with the multiple losses are, even though, again, they're already going to get 4 teams into the bracket. But you need to pay attention to the language, pay attention to the treatment of that from the committee, because that could ratchet up that rhetoric and that push from those commissioners for change after the season, depending on how it goes down here over the next few weeks.
Nicole, why would they risk? I know that they have the juice and all that stuff, but why risk angering over half the potential audience?
I think that this is a world that we live in where conference commissioners are, thinking about what's best for their conferences. And they believe that is what's best for them. And they are looking at, again, potential new revenue streams. If you had a 3rd place game, or you change some things around, like the race for your conference champion, more intrigue down the stretch if there's automatic bids on the line, or protecting the SEC championship game in Atlanta, which is very valuable to the conference as well. So they're thinking about what's best for their teams. And I think that's, what they are doing first and foremost. And that's where college football is. When you have leadership, you don't really have centralized leadership, and you've had years of realignment and poaching and taking each other's schools and operating on everyone's own best self-interest. And so I think, for as collegial as they can be in certain ways as a whole from, the Power Four or across all of FBS, everyone's been acting in their own self-interest for the last, let's say 4 years, going back to COVID decisions when money was tight, and then obviously realignment as well. So there's no real, incentive to do anything other than that. And I think that, that's kind of the world we're in, and you can continue to threaten a breakaway fully or whatever it might look like. But you could also just basically be these mega conferences, be these super conferences in the current system and just have more power, have more access than everybody else, and they're accomplishing the goals that they want. So you don't have people overlooking the sport that are looking out for the greater good or competitive balance. You have people who are in charge of their own conferences who are making decisions based on what's best for their own league. And, maybe it's been a while since people were making decisions that went against maybe their own self-interest for the greater good. And I just don't know what it would take to get back to that. But right now, I'm not surprised that it's happening where, the people with the most power are making decisions that would benefit them directly. And again, they haven't changed it yet. But if they were to, I think that they would handle the backlash because it would be what's best for their conferences, and they would have the support from within their leagues.
Nicole, my last question for you is Notre Dame and Army this weekend. I noticed in your Twitter feed that you spent the day at West Point, which is absolutely a gorgeous drop-dead place like any of the military academies, the Annapolis or even Colorado Springs. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was awesome. I'd been there before, but I'd really only been to the football facility and to the football stadium. So we had spent the day with one of the senior defensive backs, and he kind of showed us around and taught us the history of different points and moments and some of the trophies and memorials around the post, which is what they call their campus. And then we also got to see them get in formation, go into the mess hall, just some of the daily traditional elements of being a cadet. So it was an awesome experience. And, it's really cool to get to tell those types of stories. Obviously, Army is undefeated. And I think, we wanted to do something like that for our Peacock pregame show for the Notre Dame Army game. But now that it's, a huge, huge game, it's even more special to get to tell those stories. And, one thing that also really comes across when you go to there or to Navy is everything is about the Army-Navy game. I mean, you go in the football facility and it says beat Navy everywhere. And it's just really cool. I mean, we've lost so much. We've lost and regained or lost completely certain rivalries and some traditional elements of college football. So it's really cool to be around one like that. And that game means so much. So yeah, it was awesome. Games at Yankee Stadium on Saturday, which is a fun little backdrop for it. But that is going to be that has some real stakes for both teams in it, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, and how much? And I said my last question, but if just in case we're talking about hypotheticals, and this is too, can you imagine if college football might just implode if Army and Indiana won this weekend?
I know. I mean, all these people that have been arguing about strength of schedules, their heads might explode because I think, this keeps certain dreams alive of Indiana being in the playoff, certainly would lock them in. But Army's got a real shot, too. Again, it depends what happens with the Mountain West and some of these other conference races down the stretch. But that would really be something if Army were to secure a berth in the CFP the week before Army-Navy and then continue on in the CFP. So that's what the sport is great. It's fun. It's surprising. It's interesting. You never know, what you're going to be talking about in November. And so that's what I think we need to celebrate and not just try to poo-poo teams like in Indiana because their schedule wasn't what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, let the games play out and see what happens. Hopefully we do get the 12 based on what they do on the field. Thank you so much, Nicole. Congratulations on what you're doing at NBC. Glad you had that opportunity. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Nicole Auerbach with NBC Sports on many things when it comes to the college football standings. I saw a note about, she's a Michigan girl. She is. And so last year, obviously a great year. Michigan, there's another blue blood type name that's 500 that I don't know what they're going to do. Just like Oklahoma, not sure what they're going to do. And so thanks for her time. And yeah, you look at the top five and you have 4 of the top 5 are Big Ten. But in the college football standings, it's a combination of what they have in that conference, which is really good, and also what the SEC does have, which could be just absolutely fun to watch. It is fun to watch. Do either one of you guys feel like that this season, and Craig, you brought this up before, that this season has been more fun or any better because the playoff is at 12?
I don't know. I'm starting to change that these last couple of weeks, all the bitching and moaning, but that was to be expected, I guess. I guess all of the, hey, the games don't matter. We just are, worthy of 5 or 6 teams because of the logo on our chest. I think that's just garbage, but I don't think you're ever going to root that out because you brainwash too many fans to think otherwise now. Because then now there's just a chunk of college football fans, and a rather large chunk, that they're never not going to believe they don't have the 5-6 best teams at all times. And they're just not even dealing it it's whether it's true or it's not. You're just never going to tell them otherwise. Even years where there is a case to be made that hey, the best teams are actually from the Big Ten, or maybe only 2 teams are actually top 6, 7, 8, whatever. It's the narrative's too strong now. Mm-hmm. People have been too conditioned. So it's just there's this brainwashing that's gone on for 3 decades that is just impossible to reverse now at this point. And it would take Michigan winning last year and 6, 7 years in a row of other teams winning for that to even probably take a dent at this point. So that's all very annoying. Just this superiority complex. When, I try to, I don't know, I don't like those in really any walk of life. I know it's impossible to avoid. There's always the looking down by somebody or some entity or whatever, but it does remind me an awful lot of when Texas was in the Big 12. And part of the reason why it wasn't as fun as it could have been was because there was this era of superiority, and that's what college football is starting to feel like in some ways. There's all these teams who should be on equal footing and just want to play it out, but there's this I don't care what the results say. We're better because we say so and because history says so. And it's this is a brand new season. It's oh, well, that's not the point. It's look at the last 10 national championships. But we're talking about this exact – yeah, but look at the – so I think that part of it's just become so magnified now of how obvious that is, that's just so ingrained at this point in the sport. And I don't know how you change that other than other teams just going and winning and winning and winning and winning. And unfortunately, the best teams are in that league more often than not. So a combination of leagues going on some run, especially in this era where it's even tilted more in your favor, and only one other league really stands to benefit all that much from the way the college football rules are now, I think it's even less likely than it ever was before. Because now teams who just needed to win a couple games now have to win 4 games. Mm-hmm. And so that feeling of superiority is only going to grow stronger until it eventually just maybe does break away. And maybe that's what's needed to change that. But I do think it's been a more fun season. I do think the regular season has mattered just as much, if not more. I do think it's made it way more exciting from a Big 12 standpoint. Definitely way better. But I do think just in general, the fact that these last couple of weeks have bogged down on Indiana and why – teams 5, 6 deserve to get in, whereas maybe a Big 12 school gets in. I just think that's all a bunch of bullshit, And so that part of it I'm not enjoying. That part of it I do not like. But I kind of knew we were going to get to this point. When you had as many teams as you have, you knew there was going to be that argument. People thought it was going to be about who's number 13 versus number 12. And the argument's about how many teams can each league try to cram in. And that's basically what's taken precedent now. And so it's become this tug-of-war between Sankey and Petiti now, and this little snipping back and forth on Twitter today, and I guess it was yesterday. So I don't know how much I love that part of it, but I still would take this, having said all of that, over what we had when we were arguing over, well, this team lost a game and their conference isn't as good, so they don't deserve to be top 4. And they don't even get a crack at a title. I think that was garbage too. So I'd rather have all of this, this arrogance or arguments or whatever you want to call it about who's really the best off the field. I'd still rather have that to have 12 teams go and settle it on the field.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I've used this before, and we have Brian Howell in a moment, next segment after a break on Colorado. Most of the time, things are cyclical, whether it's a division or a conference in the NBA or a division or a conference in the NFL. It's cyclical. The SEC has kind of put that a little bit towards a halt because they have won so many over. But what really is, 15 or 20 years since about the LSU.
It's been over 20 years.
Yeah, it's been about 20 years. So they've actually, but they haven't had many down years. You've had teams and conferences that have had their ups and downs, but they've pretty much steady. And there was also the thought that, well, it's because of what Meyer did at Florida. Saban then took it for craziness to Alabama.
Saban did it first at LSU.
At LSU, then Florida, and then again. But you know what? They have a lot of teams that have won national titles, and every conference, including the Big Ten, would love to have half of them in the last 20, 25 years. I respect that about it.
I hate kind of talking about this in some way. I mean, you have to. It's like, I don't want to make it sound like it's just bagging on the SEC constantly. It's just that there's this part of the fandom that just refuses to believe anything other than the fact that, they're the best or anything like that. So I think that to not, even consider that other teams should have the opportunities or should be in the race. I hate that superiority complex. But when you take into account, like, most of them are probably 23-year-olds, and all they've ever seen in their entire lives is Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, all these teams. It's only teams that win titles. Like, you'd be conditioned that way as well. So I totally get it. That's what I'm saying about it's going to be like nearly impossible to unwrangle that, though. And those are now the fans that are the people in college, and then the people they're going to be moving on and becoming the next generation of college football fans. So I think we're too far to reverse that. And that's what 20-something years of just pure and utter dominance will do. But I do think now it's just so muddied brains that you don't even consider the possibility that anybody could be better, or that they even, like, the part that bugs me the most is just that they even deserve a shot. Like, that's the arrogance that I just am like, what are you talking about? Like, and it's like the Lane Kiffin, the championship game. I understand the point he was trying to make, but, like, you really are trying to dictate wins and losses without games even being played, and that part of it I don't respect or appreciate at all. I understand it. I just don't respect or appreciate it, and I know I'm not alone because that's what so much of the conversation this week has been about. But the other side doesn't think that they're wrong in any way, and they feel like the top 8 teams are all from one league, and that's not true.
The top 8 last 25 years probably true.
Probably would be. Yeah. Well, yeah, now that you've taken Texas and Oklahoma, now you've added them. Yeah. So, like, the Big Ten can say that because, they've added Oregon and USC, and Washington can now count for them and all of that. So, realignment only plays more into their hand. But, I do think this week has shown the ugly side of the 12 team, and it wasn't number 13's getting screwed and it's going to turn into 14, 15, and 16. I guess it kind of is that, but really it's mostly just a league being very vocal, and maybe even a couple leagues being very vocal about why the results do matter in some cases and don't matter in others. And I just think it's very subjective, but I get it because you're trying to do what's best for you. And so when everybody has their own selfish goals and they're not on the same team, selfishness is going to come out, and that's what happens.
If the Big 12 had the skins in the wall, they'd damn sure be doing the same thing. I'm sure they would, yeah. Or if the Big 10, who really doesn't have as many skins in the wall as you might think. When was their last national? Michigan. And then before that, it was 14 Ohio State. But they've had a couple in the last 10 years. Man, I tell you what, the chat is interesting today. We have some newbies. We appreciate you being a part of it. Just kind of watch your language if you don't mind. I know it's on YouTube, but just kind of have fun with it. There's a lot of trash talking going on. Guess what? After this weekend, either you're going to look pretty smart or you're going to also probably not show up on Monday during our show.
And that's what's also crazy is that so much of this can get sorted out. It can get sorted out this weekend, so we're like flipping out, but all right. I know we got to roll.
All right, we got to roll because Brian Howell is next. BYU, do they win this weekend, yes or no, or 50-50? Arizona State.
I'm leaning no, but I'm not done deciding yet.
Among the 12, and I don't have all the schedules in front of me. I just think it's interesting. BYU's 50-50. Ohio State, they're going to win? Probably favored 75-80, maybe 85-90. But Alabama, I don't even know who they're playing. Yeah. Notre Dame, Army, favored. Georgia, Penn State, Ole Miss, Indiana, of course, right now. I get what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Boise State pretty much has gotten themselves in a position of rolling. Oregon, Miami. So I wonder if like 3 or 4 teams that lose in the top 12, if they do, of the latest standings, how much fun that will be on Wednesday of next week. When we come back, Brian Howell, Colorado, we'll also have our Big 12 Bowlsby pod, and a little bit later on, in about an hour, a little less than that, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar, and this is 365 Sports. The Baylor alumni fan engagement with Doug Furch, Paul Thorpe. Baylor right now, basketball, they're in the Bahamas. Baylor football will be on the road just, 3 hours southeast of here in Houston. A large contingent of Baylor alums and fans will be there, and, of course, a lot of Houston fans will be there, too. They'll have tailgating, and they'll have special events for the entire weekend, and if you want to be a part of that, if you're in the Houston area, or maybe if you're 100 miles one way or the other, that you want to know more about it if you don't already, get in touch with the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement Group by contacting Doug Furch or Paul Thorpe. If you have a tailgate party or a watch party that you're doing and you want to get the word out, they can help you out. Not just football, but other sports too. The Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement, Doug Furch, Paul Thorpe. Go to Facebook or Baylor.edu for more information.
It's time to score big savings at the Kickoff to Savings event on GMC trucks at Richard Carr GMC. Take the winning drive with the Texas Truck MVP. GMC Sierra is the best truck on the road. Save $9,000 on 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with 2010 or newer approved trade-in. Plus, qualified buyers get 1.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. See dealer for details. Save big and score your deal at the Kickoff to Savings event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr, they have the truck for you.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
El Conquistador Restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
The Daily Camera and Brian Howell. We've had Brian on since back when there was thoughts about realignment and Colorado in the four corners in the Big 12 and more. He has been with us many times and joins us on this show today as Colorado gets ready for their game at KU. Brian, is that frozen?
This is just the monitor
Oh,
thing.
okay.
It's up.
Brian, thank you very much for your time. So what is it like, my friend, in Boulder, Colorado, with the excitement of where they are and what they have in front of them?
Well, it's getting interesting, that's for sure. I mean, it's been interesting since Coach Prime was hired for obvious reasons, but it's getting interesting for football reasons, because obviously there's Heisman Trophy candidates and, Big 12 title on the line, things like that. So it's getting a lot of fun and certainly more meaningful November games than we've had around here in a long time.
Brian, in your opinion, what happened to them after that Nebraska game? Did they get humbled enough to where they're still going to have flash, but did they get humbled enough to where it changed them fundamentally and they kind of knew that they had to toughen up? Absolutely.
I think it happened in the locker room at halftime at Nebraska. If you look at that game, they were down 28-0 at halftime. They outscored the Huskers 10-0 in the second half, which may not mean much to a lot of people. I promise you Nebraska was trying – they would have loved to have scored 56 in that game. Something happened to them at halftime where they kind of had that wake-up call like, okay, teams are not going to roll over for us, and we better be on point every single week. It really started at halftime at that point, and they've been really good outside of the loss to K-State, which came down to the wire. They've been really good ever since they came out of the locker room at halftime in Lincoln, and that flipped a switch for sure. And Shedeur, he did a Zoom with some media today. He mentioned that very thing. He wasn't even asked about it, but he said that Nebraska game really clicked for them.
Brian, what's it like right now? I mean, I know it's easy to see online, very vocal amount of fans online when it comes to Colorado, but actually in Boulder and the fandom, what's it been like to see not only a terrific season, but to be at this point in the season and having all that they have to play for still in front of them?
Yeah, it's exciting, but the one thing that's impressive about this team is that they're not getting caught up in all that stuff. I mean, they try to temper us a little bit, and they say, well, hold on, we still got to win this week. We don't care about Big 12 title and all those things like that. We've got to win this week or else none of that matters. And so the impressive thing about them is they've been very locked in and week out on just what's in front of them. That's why they're winning, is because they're not looking at the big picture. And it's because you have guys like obviously Coach Prime that knows how to win. Shedeur has been a winner. Travis knows how to do this. And you look at some of these other guys, and Nakai Hill-Green began his career at Michigan. Levanta Bentley, one of their linebackers, began his career at Clemson. These guys know what championship football looks like, and they've been able to lead this team through this.
Is it fair to say that despite the weapons of what Shedeur has with the wide receivers and the run game gotten slightly better, not great, but better, the protection is slightly better, but this team is in a position where they are now because what they've now done on defense. Not that they're perfect, but that has given them an opportunity to be where they are.
Absolutely. I said to a colleague today, obviously Travis and Shedeur are the face of this team. I think the defense is actually becoming the identity of this team because they're now showing that they can be physical with people, and they hit hard. I mean, if you watch that Utah game, they were very physical against what has been one of the more physical teams, well, really in the Pac-12, but obviously Utah is one of the more physical teams in the Big 12, even though they're struggling right now. That defense, they're almost 2 touchdowns better than what they were last year as far as points given up. They went from 35 points a game last year. They're around 22 points this year. That's been the massive change in this team, is that defense.
Brian, Julian Lewis, the big news today, obviously coming in. That pretty much solidifies Deion coming back, right? He's not going to just take a 5-star QB and then bounce.
Well, you would think so. I mean, I'm sure there's been times when coaches have signed a 5-star and then left, but a lot of the signs are there that Deion's coming back, and I think that's one of the big ones. Is I don't think Deion would do that to a kid that right now is 16 years old, and just leave after going through that full court press of getting him to Boulder. The kid commits and then leaving. So I think it does. I will say, I've been on record. I thought this was a 2-year deal and Coach Prime would leave after this year. I don't think that anymore. I think he's coming back.
Brian, what are the biggest questions you have about this team right now?
Offensive line for sure. I think that's still going to be a question mark throughout the rest of this season. I think that anytime they run up against a team that is going to be really strong in the trenches, they're going to have some trouble. That may not come until the college football playoff. I don't know, but you look at Utah. I mean, Utah still got after Shedeur, quite a bit last week, and Kansas State got after him. Baylor was all over him, earlier this season. So that's still a question mark. But they've got so many weapons, and they've found ways to combat that that they can get through it. The bigger question is whether he's going to get hit hard enough at some point to where it knocks him out.
You mentioned the second half halftime and the second half against Nebraska. And even Gary Barnett has been on with us, and Matt McChesney talked about how they were bullied, and that woke them up a little bit. How much did winning the game by the way they did in that bang-bang game with Baylor when it looked like they were dead in the water? Baylor went one way, now they've turned it around, but Colorado since that time seems to have put the afterburners on. Not just absolutely just like crushing people, but how much did that give this team a boost?
I think it was huge. To start Big 12 play like that, they were dead in the water. I mean, I was already writing my story about them losing that game because, frankly, there's no other quarterback I've covered at Colorado that would have made that play at the end of regulation and won that game. I tied the game, obviously, and sent it to overtime. But, I think that was huge for them. Nebraska woke them up. I think that Baylor game was maybe that sigh of relief, but also gave them like, okay, we may be able to do something special if we just knock off some of this other crap that we're doing here. And they've been pretty solid ever since then.
Brian Howell, the Daily Camera, with us from Boulder on 365 Sports.
Brian, do you think that they are deep enough and skilled enough now to win a playoff game, should they get there?
Yes, but it depends on who the matchup is. I think that's going to be the key for them is, again, if they run up against somebody that's just really dominant in the trenches, I think they're going to have a really hard time. I think, if they're like in Oregon, somebody like that will probably have their way with Colorado. But honestly, any team that has Shedeur Sanders on it, I'm going to give them a shot to win it, because of things like the Baylor game. They're never out of it. And, I think that he gives them a shot every single time. But I do think that any team that is really good in the trenches could beat them, but they are deep. I think they can beat a lot of teams in the country. There's probably only about 7-8 teams I look at right now and say, I really don't think they can beat that team.
We know they control their own destiny right now, but this is a big game coming up against Kansas, who is as hot as anybody. And you look at that schedule and you look, oh, man, look at all those losses. Well, look a little closer, right? And you see, like, those were very close to being a lot of wins, too. What stands out to you about Kansas, and what potential problems do you think they could pose, including, a road game for the Buffaloes this weekend?
Yeah, first off, the road, I think that, Kansas obviously played very well at Arrowhead the last couple times they've been there. So that's going to be tough. But the Buffs have been phenomenal on the road. I mean, they've won 4 in a row on the road, and all of them have been blowouts. So they haven't done that in 30 years to where they've had a road streak like they are right now. So they love going on the road, actually. They told us after Texas Tech, when they had all the tortillas flying at them and everything, their players said, look, if people don't hate us, we're not comfortable. We like being hated. We like that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue so much as they got to stop Devin Neal. Jalen Jackson's going to be a tough one for them as well. And those corners, I mean, Kansas has legit secondary, and those corners can hang with CU's receivers. So that's going to be a fun battle, actually, to watch Travis Hunter, LeJontay Wester, and those guys against the KU corners. That could be a battle that kind of dictates what happens in this game.
Yeah, if somebody would have said back in August or when we were at Big 12 Media Days in July in Vegas that Kansas is going to have to beat Colorado to become closer to bowl eligible, and Colorado has a chance to maybe win to get to the Big 12 championship, they all would have thought we were kind of maybe on something, right?
Yeah, I was talking to a colleague again today, and we were talking about how often the view of this game has changed from August. In August, you thought, well, KU's they're going to win that game. They're one of the top in the Big 12. And then halfway through the season, you're like, well, man, KU's 1-5. Colorado's rolling. They're going to win that game. Well, now it's kind of like, ooh, that's going to be a tough one. So, I think, honestly, had KU lost that game at BYU last week, I would have felt even stronger about Colorado this week because KU would have had nothing to play for. But KU winning that game, pulling that out, and still having the bowl game carrot, I think is really huge for the Jayhawks, and it's going to make this even tougher for Colorado.
Brian, Deion Sanders, you mentioned that this team almost maybe feeds off the negativity or what people think. I think a lot of people respect the hat. I know there's that anger or hate or people don't like the brashness, the glitz and glamour. But in my opinion, that hasn't been quite that way this year compared to maybe that 3-0 or whatever start it was after wins against TCU and Nebraska last September.
No, it hasn't. It's been very football, and the sidelines are still busy. Home games, you'll still see, some celebrities, but whereas last year was celebrities I could identify, this year it's not. This year it's some of so there's like I don't know who that is. I'm guessing they're famous because they've got a lot of jewelry and people are hanging around them. But last year was more people I could recognize. This year I think they're very more focused on football, and not that they weren't last year, but I think there's a seriousness to what they're doing because they know they're a better team. I think they know they're a strong team this year, whereas last year was kind of like, let's set the foundation. This year they know they've got something, and you can tell there's a difference in Coach Prime. There's a difference in the attitude of this team.
Brian, thank you very much. We appreciate it, buddy. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Enjoy it, and I know you have, and I know you will. It's been great for, I'm sure, what you do, and it's been great for the Big 12, the arrival of the four corners, but also the runs by different teams that we thought would be different teams, like Utah might be a part of it, Arizona might be a part of it, Arizona State and Utah and Colorado. Thank you, Brian Howell, with the Daily Camera in Boulder for his time with us on 365 Sports. Coming up next, we will get to Dave Aranda on the Big 12 coaches and then also the Big 12 four corners, Bowlesby pod, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU. This is 365 Sports. So the other day I went to Don Chibador and Coffee Beans to get some of the gummies, the CBD, for if you at night seem like you're in a kind of groove where you just don't fall asleep. A lot of it might be what you might be eating late or having a caffeine or something late in your system. That can affect you. But if you really just, you're tossing and turning and you lose an hour or even 30 minutes of sleep, alarm goes off and you snooze it 5 times, they have Vita Dreams. It's a CBD. It's a gummy, and it allows you to kind of calm down a little bit. And you might have different things on your mind. It might be what you have the next day. It might be personal. It might be financial. It also might be something that you're dealing with. CBD Vita Dreams can help you have a more relaxing and restful sleep and maybe even get that extra 30 minutes to an hour. They have the cigars and the 48-foot walk-in humidor and the fresh coffee beans and more. But they also have Vita Dreams, Don Chibador and Coffee Beans inside the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We'll get to the Big 12 Bowlsby Pod, one of the 4 pods among the 16 teams in the Big 12. Bowlsby Pod, named after the commissioner, reacting after the Texas-Oklahoma news about entering and leaving for the SEC at some point. And so we'll do that in just a second. Earlier in the week, Dave Aranda with his Monday media session discussing many things after Baylor now in this nice 4-game winning streak and Houston this week. But someone brought up the question about the Big 12. Is it deep? Is it high quality? And kind of what he sees right now within the conference.
Week in, week out, there's been upsets in the Big 12, especially the last few weeks. Just kind of what do you make of the depth of this conference that it seems like pretty much, any given week, one of the 16 teams can beat the other?
Yeah, I think you said it. I think it's just very difficult. There's really not, outside of Colorado, they probably have 2 guys that fit this description. I think in some of the other leagues, when I was in the SEC, there'd be guys where just like no one can cover this guy, no one can block this guy, and it became, it was a Hoosiers, Jimmy Chitwood and clear the floor and all of that. And so there's some of that with Colorado for sure. But outside of that, you've got there's teams with really, really good players, but not that level of it, where everyone else is kind of the same. And is it at home? Is it away? Right? Is it an injury deal? Is it a schematic thing? I think the coaching in our league is as strong as any other league. I'd put our coaching versus any league just because of that factor, that so much of it's the same. And it's so balanced that you're looking for all types of schematic advantages. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult. The 4 quarters to be where you need to be is difficult to do.
All right, so there he is. If you listen to what he said, that the conference is a free-for-all, and but that the coaches, because there aren't many teams with what you would consider high-level, highly recruited, and dudes that, not that they can't get to the NFL, a bunch of players from the Big 12 will be drafted, but that the coaches have to be, that have taken on this challenge and how deep they are and how good they are. Maybe Colorado's the one school, and he said that about that has some of the guys that would play or be the bling-bling, so to speak, as far as the NFL draft.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much about the NFL. It's about, the guys who are, freak show, edge rusher types. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, and the SEC
he's
does
not talking about just merely they've got NFL guys. He's talking about, the freakiest of the freakiest guys that typically you only see at Alabama, Georgia, LSU, those edge rushers, that's kind of the premier position. But, yeah, I don't think you go like, oh, they've got all the best quarterbacks and all the NFL guys. No, I think they've got their fair share. I think other leagues do too. But I think it's the difference makers that they have a few more of that are like the elite of the elite of the elite that are mostly in that league that, like he said, you can't cover. It doesn't even matter. Like, put your best guy. It doesn't matter. They're just too special. And I do think there are, unique guys like that, and that the SEC does have its fair share, if not the bulk of those guys, especially when you boil it down to some of the most important positions. And what's, I keep saying edge rusher because what's like the flavor of the month, like as far as position talk over the last 3-4 years, right? Where's the biggest difference made? What are people looking for more than anything else? They're looking for those edge types, right? So I think those are the kinds of guys that he's referring to as much as anything else that you get in that league, that no matter how you coach, it just doesn't matter. They're just too freaking good. Well, there's nobody that's like that except for probably Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are like probably the best examples of that. Beyond that, no, I don't think there's anybody that you look at in any team and you go, that dude's unblockable, that dude's uncoverable, that dude's this or that dude's that. I don't think that's the case. So what does it boil down to then? It boils down to just simply like who coaches them up better and whose teams perform better. And that's why the Big 12 is a parity league. It's because there's not really anything differentiating these teams. They all have really good head coaches. They all have pretty good rosters. They all have their fair share of NFL guys. They all have the same things, really. They just don't have like the dogs that make the difference in winning a national championship and just being a pretty good team.
Last year, when we would get Aranda almost every week, I remember asking him one time this would have been the 21 team, about how Baylor had dogs. I mean, Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie, Woods the safety, among some others. And there were a couple other guys too. But he said that there's still the difference. He was very honest and transparent. Somebody asked me, well, what was he supposed to say? He was very transparent, like exactly what you just said. The dudes they have on the defensive line, not just one or two, but the numbers of dudes. Why is LSU down this year? Garrett called this out during the summer. They don't have many of the dudes, it appears, on the defensive line.
Well, and even Petrie and Bernard, they were really good players, but they're not even the types of guys I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the top 3 guy that gets picked in the NFL draft. Now, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter can be those guys. So, again, they're the outlier this year in the league. But beyond that, nobody has that type of a guy. I think, offensive line, they might have even a little bit of the tipping the scales. But, yeah, I really think it comes down to just the freaks of nature that you get at like maybe wide receiver at LSU on some years, right? That just doesn't matter. Like, you throw whatever you want to at him, nobody can cover that guy. Or the edge rushers that no matter what you do, nobody can block that guy. So, Bernard and Petrie and those guys are really good players, but they're not exactly what he's talking about because there's a lot of really good linebackers and safeties in the SEC too that are on that level. I think we're talking about the cream of the crop.
Yeah, look, the biggest difference to me in the SEC and everybody else is, occasionally it's quarterbacks and skill players, but those are more evenly distributed. Where the SEC dominates is the big dudes.
Like for Georgia, like Mikael Williams.
Yeah.
Like, those are the guys that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Like Jalen Walker. Like, those are the types of guys he's talking about.
Yeah, there's the ones that when you get those, like the Tavondre Smoak receivers in the Big 12. But, like, the guys that are SEC guys, that are the big guys.
Here you go. Here's a mock draft I just pulled up, all right? So, like, some of the I mentioned Jalen Walker. Who else? Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M is a first-round pick. James Pierce, defensive end, Tennessee's first-round pick. Like, especially on the D-lines, I think they've got, like, those extreme advantages versus a lot of those. And that's why I think, like, Colorado going up against – some teams could have a pretty good shot, but I do think to Brian Howell's point, like they line up against Georgia, Shedeur is screwed, man. Like I don't care who you are. Like he's going to have trouble because they're not going to be able to block those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's any question that they. I watched South Carolina. We got to get to the 4 corners of the Bowlesby pod, those 4 schools. But I watched South Carolina the other day. Man, they look good. Yeah. That's one of those teams that coming off the bus looks really good, but also when they play. Who's their edge rusher that's so amazing? He's an All-American candidate, defensive end for South Carolina. I can't.
Kennard or
Kennard. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal type player. All right, let's get to the four corners. Let's start with BYU. Got dinged last week and had the ball late in the game, and they've been able to do something with that in the past and find a way to win. They could not. Kansas got them. Now they bounce back and on the road against as red-hot a team as you can find in Arizona State. Your thoughts about Kalani Sitake, BYU, and what can be a very difficult road trip?
I think that they I don't know. I'm going back and forth on BYU and Arizona State this week. I think they will win. I don't know. I mean, Arizona State's just playing so well.
I can tell you don't know.
I like, it's so tough. I like the way that I know the game's going to be close because they're all close. I like the way that they finish games, that they find a way to either make a play or put a stamp on it. And so if Arizona State can keep them from doing that at the end of the game, then they'll win. But I don't know. I mean, this is a great game, and I'm sure it's a game that Desmond Howell will be like, "Well, we're picking this game."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I care less about what games he's interested in, but yeah, you're probably right. I like Arizona State here right now. I mean, they're at home. It's going to be a big crowd. I think they are getting equal to or better quarterback play. I think they obviously have a great run game. I know BYU's got a really good defense, so something's going to have to give there. But I think the way Jordan Tyson has really become a star in his own right, that's another threat. It's not just like it's Scattaboo and that's it. You got to worry about the passing game because of how good Sam Leavitt's been and Jordan Tyson, among others. So I think Arizona State can spread the ball around. I think they've got a pretty good defense. I don't like what I've necessarily seen from BYU's offense a lot of the time. I know the easy, simple, safe thing to do is just blame the OC every time and, just point that out, but I do think there are issues in terms of just the overall execution and talent as well that has hurt them at times. So I like BYU a lot. I think they're going to be pissed off and ready to go book their trip to Arlington, and they know that they control their own destiny. But the thing is now Arizona State does too. Mm-hmm. So the winner of this game is basically going to Arlington. I mean, barring some just epic sequence of events. That's going to be who's going to probably go play Colorado. Now, Kansas wins and so on. Like then things that would be that sequence of events. But this is basically for a spot in Arlington. So Arizona State's at home. They're playing well. Their skill players are really good. Their defense is solid. I think they believe. I think this is going to be one hell of a football game. I lean Arizona State just slightly. But I do think, BYU could definitely roll in there and win this game because like every Big 12 game, it's a toss-up, really. I mean, they're very equal when all is said and done, and it'll just come down to execution, turnovers, kind of those same things. But I do like Arizona State a little bit. I think BYU's a very good team, but I do think that was kind of – you saw that coming last week. That had been kind of teased before, and I know we'd had some pushback on that when I brought up a couple of games, but it was true. It was true. Like, they were very fortunate, and you do make your own luck in some cases, but you also get a little bit of a break. Utah, for example, right? So I think there was probably some emotional baggage from that last week for them as well. I was just shocked that they lost at home, really. I mean, that was the big surprise to me. And at night, so it was like just this – what usually has been a force field for them and as much of a home field advantage as you can possibly have. And that didn't really play into things because Kansas played such a well and tight game. So I think BYU is going to be frothing at the mouth. It ought to be a hell of a game. I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see them bounce back, but I do lean ASU here.
I do too. I think they got the mojo at home. Sometimes you can hyperventilate, but I don't think Arizona State playing BYU is going to be one where either team, if it was in Provo or also in Tempe, I just like the way they're playing. BYU is tough as nails. They had the loss. Kalani Sitake, I believe in what he does. But you know what? Who among the two quarterbacks, Retzloff or Leavitt, is playing better right now?
Say Sam Leavitt is.
Just a little bit, right? Who has the better running game?
Oh, well, definitely Arizona State. It's not
with Scattaboo. So, and I think both defenses are just angry good. Arizona State's defense has not given up a lot of points. They've only lost twice, and it's a great – I think Arizona State is the slight favorite. Speaking of which, we went Arizona State. We're talking BYU. That's the game with the Bowlesby pod. UCF.
And West Virginia, which is a game. I mean, like, I thought when I saw this game on the schedule weeks ago, I was like, man, that could be good. That could be really good. Both of them are well, UCF is definitely playing for their bowl lives, and West Virginia's playing to get bowl eligible. They have one more shot next week. If UCF loses this game, they're not in a bowl for sure this year because that will be their 7th loss. Both these teams have been so wildly disappointing. I mean, crazy, wildly disappointing all year long. And, you know, what I expect in this game is Garrett Green gets some yards, C.J. Johnson gets some yards, UCF, bounces, gets, has some good plays. And then the team that doesn't crap the bed the most wins. Like, that's kind of the season for these two teams. It's like, who can do the least bad stuff? And I really do hate this game. I hate it. And I wanted to like it.
Okay,
I wanted to.
Greg, do you hate this
Desmond,
game?
sorry we're picking this game and
I'm
talking
not
about the Big 12.
I'm just saying, I say I hate it because it just breaks my heart that it's not good. I wanted it to be good.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be good, and it's just not.
What's the game where you kind of hit something when it pops up out of the hole?
Whack-a-mole?
That's who they are.
Yeah, they're both whack-a-mole.
You don't know when they're just up and down, erratic throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see more Dylan Risk at quarterback. Had the big blazing hot kind of debut and then just cooled off. And, I mean, still talented player, but I think it's going to be important how he plays. And then again, you've got that running game, which I think has to be frothing at the mouth, seeing what they saw in Morgantown last week. Like, damn, look at how Baylor's running all over them. You think that we'll be able to do that with R.J. Harvey and company? I think you feel pretty good about your chances too. So the part of it is that Baylor started doing that after they spread the ball around and after they forced West Virginia to kind of open it up a little bit. So I think it'll be really important for Dylan Risk to be sharp passing early on to open up that running game as much as possible. And if they can get that going, then I think that's bad news for West Virginia. But, I mean, it's two teams with their backs against the wall. They both desperately need a win. In UCF's case, it is win or you're done next week. So I think that will be some motivation. And they're slight favorites going to Morgantown. But then again, Morgantown doesn't really mean anything at this point. I mean, it really doesn't.
Yep.
Like, it'll be a tough crowd and all that, but, like, as far as, man, it's impossible to win there. No, it's not. Like, 4 teams have already done it this year alone, so it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. So I think UCF has to like their chances. They're coming off a bye week as well. And West Virginia I think, as much as people are down on Gus Malzahn, I just think there's more to grasp onto there than the negativity that's seemingly never ending in Morgantown right now. So, man, if Neil Brown doesn't win this game, that would be bad
Tech
news.
next week.
And then they'd have to go to Lubbock to have to win to get to a bowl game, which I wouldn't love their chances necessarily doing that. So, I like UCF's shot here. They're slight favorites, like I mentioned. I'm excited to see more Risk, and I think that running game's got to be pretty excited about what could be in store.
By the way, if you ever do go to Lubbock, look for the tailgating area with one of our own, Kim Coulter, who's a Texas Tech alum. And he has the 365 Sports logos all over his tent. We appreciate him for doing that. And if you're going to the Houston game, if you're in the chat, Retired Stockbroker has a great setup there outside the stadium, so also wanted to bring that up too. Now, we went BYU, we've gone UCF, we've kind of discussed West Virginia at the same time. We don't need to because they're not a part of the Bowlesby pod. Let's go to Houston. They host Baylor on Saturday, a very highly ranked defense, but an offense, even though Chris has given them a lift, an offense that does struggle at times, that beat K-State and gave themselves a nice boost here at the end of the season.
I think that Zion Chris and that offense will get a couple of big plays on the Baylor defense. I do. I think that they'll put a little bit of a scare, especially early on, for things they're not expecting, wrinkles that they throw in. Sean Bell knows a thing or two about this, so they'll have a couple of big swings that they can make. But ultimately, even though the defense is really good, I think Baylor's offense is just too much. They're playing too well, and it's going to be tough for Houston. But I would not be surprised to see them, get a couple of, body shots in.
Well, Baylor's defense has given up big plays in the secondary. So if they can have a chance to throw the ball, they've been giving up big plays. It's driving Dave Aranda crazy. Craig?
I like Baylor here. I do think there's the elements of a trap game, but I think they have to be aware of that by now if that was kind of the feeling in the air. So I don't think Houston's going to surprise them. I think there's a lot of mutual respect. I think they know that defense is pretty good. Like, let's not overplay their elite status or anything, but they are a very good defense. But, yeah, I mean, it's pretty much feast or famine offensively. Can they hit a couple plays and then play really good defense and make it a 17-14, 20-17 type of a game? If they can, then, yeah, there's a really good chance they win that game because that's the only way they can win. They're not going to score 30 points. They're just not. And if they do, then Dave Aranda needs to fire Dave Aranda, the defensive coordinator, if that happens, because that would be an embarrassment based on what we've seen from Houston's offense at this point. So they could hit some explosives. Chris can take off and run with it, or man jack, make a big play. They can hit you in special teams with Muse, but I think with the way Baylor's offense is playing, that tilts it in their favor, even against a really good Houston defense, and I would still take Baylor's defense over Houston's offense. So I think the total package here, I'm saying I like the Bears. I like how hot they are in terms of how well they played over the last month, whereas Houston's kind of been up and down. So, yeah, I expect everything and the kitchen sink from Willie Fritz, but I still take Baylor, and I don't really get too concerned with the trap game. I think if they lose this game, it won't be because they sauntered in there not respecting Houston. I think it will be because stuff just went cataclysmically wrong, like Sawyer Robertson throws like 4 picks and 2 pick sixes, and to me that's how Houston would kind of have to win, in my opinion.
Somebody on staff at Baylor told me that this will be the Baylor's offense toughest test with what Houston does. They're not the highest ranked defense in the Big 12, but they're among the top 30, and that it feels that way. But the offense of Baylor is going so well. I love what Willie Fritz has done. They've had a couple of nice body punches this year. They've had a couple of nice wins. They're still like in year one, man. This is an overhaul with a lot of different faces. I like what he's done. I like what Houston's doing, and it would be great if they somehow got to a bowl game. That won't be easy, but there's a lot of teams in that position that have to win out to get to a bowl game. But I don't think they're going to get there because I think that seventh loss comes this weekend. Cincinnati, man, they're in I don't want to say a free fall because it seems like everybody other than 2 or 3 teams have had that double-digit, back-to-back, or even 3 consecutive losses. Colorado lost by 11. West Virginia lost at home by 7. Lost by 17 at Iowa State. They now go to a very pissed-off Manhattan, Kansas, and Chris Klieman and company off an emotional loss. Cincinnati on the road against Kansas State. The Bearcats have to win one of their last 2. A lot of teams in the conference do, and they have TCU after this weekend.
Yeah, I would not. I mean, especially when you're trying to get off a 3-game skid, want to go to like last week. This is also like the poor luck of the draw. Like, okay, they had a 2-game losing streak last week. Where do they go? To another team that had a 2-game losing streak and that was better than them in Iowa State and pissed off. Now they're going to a Kansas State team that is, barely hanging on to the Big 12 race and needs to win out to even have a shot and should be pissed off and should be the same way that Iowa State was last week. And they're going to their place and have to play in Ames and Manhattan back-to-back is not the best. In most years in the Big 12, you wouldn't want to do that back-to-back. Even if these teams were not as good as they are, you really wouldn't want to have that because this is 2 really tough places to play season in, season out. Yeah, I don't like the odds here, especially since I do expect Kansas State to come out refocused and angry and pissed off and whatever you want to say. I think Kansas State wins here. But, look, they might be reeling because of what happened last week. Now that they're on the outside looking in, it could be, oh, no, here we go again. And look, Cincinnati's shown the ability to beat teams and play close. But, they beat Arizona State. Granted, Sam Leavitt wasn't playing in that game. But since then, it's not been good, and maybe they've come back down to earth.
I think Brennan Sorsby's not nearly as good as he was, early on in the season in terms of just like putting up numbers and kind of leading the way and all of that. I think that's sort of cooled off, and he's had some performances like last week where he had a really good game running the football. That's still very much a threat for him. Had a massive game in that regard, his biggest of the year. But the passing, wasn't there. Now, that's probably having to do with Iowa State and the fact you were able to run the ball very well. But at the same time, you were chasing a lot of that game. So I don't know if the passing game awakens a little bit more this weekend, but I think that it needs to. He's had a very good year. I just think that it's cooled off compared to what we were talking about, the first few weeks of the season. And I think Cincinnati's really put themselves in a tough spot because there was an opportunity to get bowl eligible these last 3 weeks. They've gone 0-3, and now they're getting into that point where it's nearly must win, and your must win is having to go to Manhattan, Kansas, and if you don't win there, then having to go play TCU at home, which maybe that's where you get your win number 6. And it probably will have to be because I don't think it's this weekend in Manhattan. I just don't like the way they're really playing right now, and I think that Kansas State is a team that's going to be ready to go win on senior night. I think that climbing and the emotions and all that has been a little bit of a issue or a distraction. I don't think that's why they lost last weekend or anything, but I do think it plays into the big picture. But I think Kansas State is that was a get your mind right game last week, in my opinion. And I think they'll be geared up to send the seniors off happy. But it ought to be a nice battle. I mean, I think they'll both have their claws out for sure because this is a really important game. I mean, K-State needs to show something here. They lose another game. I don't care what Chris Kleiman says about the off-the-field stuff. That would be really worrisome. And then for Cincinnati, you lose 4 straight and then go to a game where you had 5 wins and you potentially go the entire last month of the season and don't make a bowl game, that would be a freaking disaster. So They really need to win this game this weekend.
It would be similar to Baylor, not quite, in 2022 when they went into a free fall after being 5-2, and in a way, unfortunately, earned a bowl berth against Air Force in -degree temperatures up in Fort Worth.
If you asked 100% of the players, I don't know about the coaches, maybe a lot of the coaches, if you could go back and have just lost one more game and not had to deal with that, because I know 100% of the media would say, yeah, 5-7 would have been a lot better than having to deal with.
I love that atmosphere.
No, I
didn't like the weather when I got outside.
It was the 7th frozen circle of hell. It was absolutely awful. There was nobody at the game.
No, it was.
It was terrible.
It was a bad
There was
deal.
a dickhead that was running the parking lot, and I say that knowing
Craig
that it's not the nicest thing. He was. I mean, he had some authority.
Let's explain to everybody. It was -0 wind chill, and Paul didn't get to go into the parking lot where we were allowed to go as a media, because I sure did. I'll never forget when we walked out of the post game. I went towards my car. Craig went towards his car. Craig was downwind, so it wasn't as bad. It was still cold. I had to go upwind, and I did not have nearly enough cover
Y'all
on my
don't get
body.
to talk about that game.
Oh, and Jack was
Y'all
outside.
don't get to talk about how bad that game was
Jack
outside.
was outside. He's even still wearing a sweater.
Yeah,
he still hasn't.
He's got snowflakes and reindeer, and oh my God!
I think we started to see the bowl projections come out, and that's a possibility again. And a lot of people are like, "No, absolutely not." I mean, if you could guarantee the weather would be okay, I'd have no problem going back there.
Absolutely.
It's a nice stadium. The stadium workers and the people there at TCU were fantastic. They were really great to us. We had a great spot in the press box. All of that was fine. The food, everything. It was just the weather was like once in a lifetime type snowstorm hits the day of that, that couple days. And it was like the freak ice storm when Jerry's hosting a Super Bowl. Like that hasn't happened since then, basically. Or I guess it happened with the Ice-Mageddon like 2 years ago, but that's the only time that's happened since the Super Bowl disaster. So that was just that bowl game, like that doesn't happen. And it just happened that year, and just so happened that Baylor was in that game in that year in that situation. And so it left a lot of bad taste and maybe missing digits for those who got, having to sit out there in the cold the entire time. But, that was brutal. That was a brutal game, and that was the worst possible way to end a season, I think, was losing at your rival's stadium in bitterly cold weather. To a service academy.
Yeah, to a service academy that's not supposed to be able to throw it, and that's all they basically did to open up an ass-whooping in that game. All right, when we come back, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. We will hear from Mickey Spagnola from DallasCowboys.com at about 5:30, and then then Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. And Marco's Pizza is the fastest-growing pizza brand in America. Marco's Pizza with 5 locations in Waco, Hewitt, Woodway, Robinson, China Spring, and Belle Meade, but one near you too. Fastest growing pizza brand in America. Go online. If you want to order, let's say you're at work or like we are, we have a show that wraps up a little after 6 and you're on your way home and there's one between where you are and home. Go online and order what you want and then pick it up on your way home or have them deliver it to you. They can do that too. Pizza the way you want it, wings, sandwiches, and more the way you want it, different codes and specials and offers the way they have it inside the website with code words that give you certain percentages or certain dollars off what you order. Bob Mock, the owner in the Waco and Central Texas area, 5 locations. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome back into 365 Sports. Time for Off the Radar, 4:45 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Taking a look at grab bag of stories from around sports. Just kind of depends on what the news cycle has or what I've tucked away. But just getting a little bit off the radar, hence the title. Although if there is something college-wise to talk about, I'll still always include that. But we were just talking about the draft, and I actually had this tabbed from earlier today. I was going to use it at some point, but might as well bring it up right now because that's kind of what the segment is for in some ways. And it's the latest mock draft from Matt Miller, who we knew when he was back at Bleacher Report.
Yep.
And then he kind of was in and out, I guess, of jobs and moving around a little bit, and has been with ESPN now, I guess, 2 or 3 years, probably.
Yeah.
It's about how long he's been at ESPN. But regardless, he's one of their lead draft guys, and he put out his latest 2025 NFL mock draft. Now, I do realize this is very early, but I don't think it's ever too early, even though the summertime ones I do find prior to the season, those, when you fast forward, like I know last year's, there were some, like the top guys are the top guys, but pretty off base, I think, in some cases. This, though, when you start to get to the end of the college football season, I think you're looking at a pretty good set list of guys and kind of where they're being eyed. So for what it's worth, just taking a look at kind of where he has them pegged right now, the #1 overall pick, he has them already projecting trades. So that's part of this that's a little bit tricky with these mock drafts. He has the Giants moving up to #1.
Okay, so they'd be trading with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars don't need a quarterback. They need a lot of other things, but they don't need a quarterback. So in this scenario, in Matt Miller's mock draft, of which there are millions, he has the Giants trading up to number 1 with Jacksonville and going all in, as he says, for Shedeur Sanders at number 1 overall.
I buy that. I would hate it for poor Shedeur. They have a terrible offensive line. Terrible offensive line. Well, maybe, you know what? If you're going to draft somebody who can make the best of having a porous offensive line, Shedeur Sanders is that guy. He's shown it, right? He's doing it.
They've gotten better at protecting him, but he's always running for his life. Yeah.
I'll tell you, they've gotten better at protecting him because Jordan Seaton is a stud.
Yeah.
The other 4 guys, not.
They're trying,
but he certainly makes it a lot better. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely. So he has Shedeur going up to the Giants at number 1. And the number 2 overall pick, he has the Cleveland Browns, who are currently 2-8. And, of course, they've got the whole Deshaun Watson debacle, which they absolutely deserve every bit of that for the way that they made that happen in the first place, giving all of that guaranteed money to a guy who's got such an uncertainty ahead of him. They have nobody to blame but themselves. But regardless, they could be looking for a quarterback because of that reason. Nobody really knows, I think, just yet. So he doesn't have them going quarterback. He has them going Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback, Colorado, number 2 overall. So if Matt Miller was correct, you'd have the 2 star Buffaloes going 1-2 in the NFL draft.
Well,
it's because the Big 12 means more.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think that Travis Hunter won't get past 3. I really don't. He's such a unique talent and can do a lot of things. I hope he goes to a place that doesn't try to just be like, you're at this and we'll do these couple little things to placate you. They need to be, you're a Travis Hunter and let's let you be a Travis Hunter.
Do y'all believe Deion's going to run interference on teams with these 2 guys?
Because like the Mannings?
Yeah, or John Elway?
I don't know. He's got a lot more, not that Archie doesn't. I don't know. I don't think he will.
The Mannings forced San Diego, was it?
Yeah.
San Diego to not pick Eli or trade Eli, right?
Now, look,
I don't know how you turn down the Giants, though, because it's New York and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, even if they're a mess, I think that's as much the importance.
Well, they're a mess because their offense sucks, and I know they don't – the quarterback play with Daniel Jones and everything else.
I'm so tired of watching him, man. I'm so tired.
Well, they are too, and I think
dude.
he's tired of going out there. I think he's
Sometimes you just look at certain guys, you're like, how are you still here? How has this not changed?
Listen, it's Cutlets time again in New York, so it's not going to be him long term. So they will be drafting a quarterback.
Yeah. Nothing against the guy. It's just like, my gosh, I think we've seen all we need to see at this point. I think it's pretty clear the Giants have tapped out that reservoir, and we need to move on and do something. So in this case, the Giants would trade up to 1 against Shedeur, but Travis Hunter, number 2. I'm not going to do all 32, but for what it's worth, Giants with that trade that Matt Miller proposes would mean Jacksonville now has the 3rd overall pick, and they would select Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle at Texas. Texas expected to have a pretty busy first round of the draft. Mm-hmm. And if you look at a lot of these mock drafts, you talk about the SEC and that advantages that they have in terms of some of the players and whatnot. I think that's evident in the NFL draft year to year now, especially in the first round, and I think that's setting up to be the case again this year. At number 4 overall, Las Vegas Raiders, he has Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, heading to Las Vegas to save that franchise and give them something to cheer for at the quarterback position.
Okay, wait a minute. So Shedeur 1?
Yeah.
Quarterbacks?
Yeah.
And Cam 2?
Yeah.
Are either one of them what you consider in this day and age is different, right? The prototypical quarterback.
Yeah,
right?
no,
There's not many cookie cutters out there anymore.
I think Shedeur is by far the best quarterback. I think Cam Ward is a bit more of he's got a little more risk to him. He's got a little Favre in him when it comes to, not like stealing from people, but when it comes to
popping pills.
No, when it comes to I can fit this in the window. He feels he can do that, and sometimes he can't. So I think that's the risk. But he'll fit in well with the Raiders. The problem with the Raiders, though, is he's going to go in there, and they don't have any skill players for him. So they're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah, well, that's where he's got him pegged. So 2 Texas signal callers, guys from Texas at the top of the quarterback rankings. And then rounding out the top 5, he's got the Tennessee Titans. They're there in SEC territory. They'll get an SEC guy in Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri at number 5 overall. That's what he has for right now, the 2-8 Titans, to try to pair him up with Calvin Ridley and Will Levis and give that a go. And then just, and this is just fun because this is obviously going to shift, but looking around, number 8 overall, Teteroa McMillan, wide receiver Arizona to the Carolina Panthers. So definitely think the Big 12 is set up for a year where they're going to have a bit more pop there in the first round than they've had over the past few years. But it's very, very SEC heavy, this first one, including a lot of Texas guys. But number 23 overall, Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back, going to the Houston Texans. So Jeanty to Houston in this first mock draft as well. And I'm trying to see if there's any other. I mean, again, Jahdae Barron's in this one. A lot of Longhorns could be in that first round. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else, though, I missed out. Jonah Savayanaya, guard at Arizona. He has him going 31st overall to the Detroit Lions, so the next to last pick of the first round. But, yeah, that is the mock draft. Just a quick look in at sort of the way it's shaping up right now. And I'll go over those Texas guys. Yes, Kelvin Banks at 3 overall. Shamar Stewart from A&M, he's got 13th to the Dolphins, big-time defensive tackle, one of those difference makers in the trenches that we talked about. Cam Williams, offensive tackle at Texas, he's got 16th overall to the 49ers. Nick Scorton, defensive end, Texas A&M, he's got 20 to the Falcons. Isaiah Bond, wide receiver, Texas, 21st to the Cardinals. And let's see, Jahdae Barron, I mentioned him, 26th overall to the Green Bay Packers. So, yeah, good 6 guys if you combine the Aggies and Longhorns as well, which obviously plays into the SEC. But it's kind of fun just to start looking at that.
Yeah.
And it'll be fun for us just in general. But the fact that there is a Teteroa McMillan, a Shedeur Sanders, a Travis Hunter, and whoever else might move up into that as far as, the Big 12 and all that. So there you go, a little bit of mock draft talk.
I just voted for the, was it the Lombardi Award? Was it yesterday? And I think I had Banks. I believe I had him won when it comes to the best lineman. The LSU had their Campbell is in that mix.
And Emory Jones is pretty good there too. But I had that's who I voted for. I voted Lou Groza. I did Lou Groza yesterday as well.
It's that time.
Yeah, it is. The only thing I guess I don't like, and I think Matt is one of the better draft guys out there and especially good at that. He's got the Cowboys taking another defensive lineman from Michigan. There needs to be a moratorium on that because Taco sucked. Mozzie sucks. And Mason Graham, I don't care if he's better. They need to just pass on it and take Ashton Jeanty. Take Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. I'm sure Ashton would love that. He went to high school in Frisco.
Hey, you know what works out
right there with the star.
You know what works out? Doesn't work out with the Cowboys? Big dudes who try to tackle people from Michigan. You know what does work out for the Cowboys? Boise State players.
Yeah.
Orlando Scandrick, Leighton Vander Esch. I mean, Tank Lawrence, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Those work out. Cedric Wilson was from Boise State. He played well for them.
Some of those guys were overachievers. Jeanty would not be that.
No.
That's that.
The star in Frisco is, let's see, 15 to 20 minutes away from where he went to high school.
Yeah.
So he'd be right there at home with the practice facility right near where he went to school and where his Texas ties come from. But there you go. Just a fun little look at a mock draft. A couple of other notes here real quick. Heard you mention this earlier. I don't know how much you guys care, but I'll just mention it because it's a little off the radar, and that is that ESPN is canceling, reportedly, Around the Horn next summer of 2025. There's no reasons that have been put forth as of now. This originally came from the New York Post. The show's been on the air for 23 years, which it does feel like that. I mean, part of me is like, no, man, I remember when that first started, and part of me is like, no, it feels like it's been on the air for 23 years at this point. But it first launched in 2002. You've had Tony Reale is the host for a long time. Max Kellerman did it originally, and then just a wide cast of characters. Woody Page, of course, is one of the guys that always comes to mind immediately. Jackie McMullen, various others, Tim Cowlishaw. Yeah, a ton of other people, plenty of them that we know. So I don't know. Did you guys even watch at this point? I'll tell you straight up, the only time I saw it was I was getting my hair cut. Like, that's the only time I ever saw it.
I don't. I will occasionally tune into PTI. Because I still really do like.
It always seemed like that was on the air when we were on the air.
Yeah, if I catch PTI, I'll watch a little PTI. I watch most of their stuff on social media. But
you know what I like about their show, and with it, is they don't take themselves too seriously.
No,
some of the others they kind of do.
Tony Kornheiser barely takes anything seriously.
Exactly. Right.
I mean,
sure,
and which is what makes him so great. I'm sad about Around the Horn. I hope that they find a new thing for Tony Reale. I think he's one of the, I met him one time at a Super Bowl years ago in passing at the party, and I couldn't believe he was there. And he's one of the nicest dudes and, classiest guys in the whole business, which is why he doesn't probably fit in with the, sports shouting that goes on in the rest of ESPN's programming schedule. So I hope they find something good for him, because I really do like Tony Reale. He's got a really great personality. He's a really classy dude. He's an old school sportscaster, I think, which is why I think we like him. But yeah, I hope they find something good for him. And but I'm gonna miss the show when I watch it. I think it's always been a good show, an interesting show.
Yeah, I have nothing against it. I just don't see it very often. But I mean, I definitely remember watching it when it first aired for a good while there. But yeah, in recent years, you just get too busy, you don't have the time, or you're just not in the same spot you were. But I don't have any ill will. I definitely wanted Skip Bayless off my airwaves for a long time, but that was a different thing. Around the Horn's been just a staple, so I know for a lot of people that'll be tough, because it's been on for 20 plus years. It's your afternoon viewing for a lot of people.
It's one of the first shows that was kind of a cross section of people talking about different, and they set it up like a game show.
We kind of need to blame it almost for some of the.
But then they launched all the what I call everyone's trying to out yell and scream and ego themselves against everybody else on the show.
I don't think we have time for the MLB awards. Those are still ongoing, but there are a few that have been handed out, so I don't think we have time for that. But we are going to find.
Yeah, we do.
We actually do. Okay. I'll throw out the awards, and you let me know if they've been named or not. Are they all out?
No, they're not all out.
That's what my whole
MVP
point
out yet?
No.
Okay.
That's my whole point, is that they haven't been put out there yet. But the awards are getting thrown out there, and we just had Cy Young. Tariq Skubal, the Detroit Tigers, he gets the American League Cy Young Award win, won just by a hair over Lugo from the Royals, as well as Cole Reagans from the Royals, former Texas Rangers pitching prospect, finished third. So the Royals with the second and third place votes, I think, when all was said and done. But yeah, Tariq Skubal gets that, and the National League Cy Young, Chris Sale of the Atlanta Braves, is your Cy Young Award winner.
If you had him as a pitcher, would you ever let him go?
No. I mean, look, he had asked to be traded because the Red Sox are in rebuilding mode. I don't mind them trading him, but I do mind them trading for Vaughn Grissom, who I know is a good prospect, but didn't play all year.
Yeah, for a Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah.
That's just sorry, but that's what the trade-off is for winning all those World Series after all the years of not having them. You win what was it, 3 or 4? Four. Yeah, 4. So you don't get to really complain right now, but I get where you're coming from. So yeah, Chris Sale, the Braves, is your NL Cy Young. American League Manager of the Year, Stephen Vaught of the Cleveland Guardians was the choice, as he won pretty convincingly over Matt Quatraro of the Kansas City Royals and A.J. Hinch of the Detroit Tigers. And then the NL Manager of the Year, Pat Murphy of the Milwaukee Brewers was the selection. AL Rookie of the Year, Luis Gil of the New York Yankees was the selection there. And National League Rookie of the Year, Paul Skeens, a.k.a. Livy Dunn's boyfriend from the Pittsburgh Pirates. But no, he's a badass in his own right for sure. I think that was a pretty easy choice for probably most. But Paul Skeens does win the Rookie of the Year. And then there was some other stuff that's like the Executive of the Year. I don't really care so much about that stuff that has already taken place. But that's a rundown of sort of some of the highlights. Still have the MVP to come, which will actually be later on today, I do believe, is when we'll find that out, maybe even before we get off the airwaves. So I'll pass that along if that does, in fact, come through. But I think Shohei Ohtani's got a good shot at it. I don't know.
The AL MVP is going to be Aaron Judge, and I think that Ohtani is going to be the NL MVP. And if you think that I'm wrong, you are not a smart person.
When here are the finalists: Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr. of the Royals, and Juan Soto of the Yankees are the AL finalists. And then on the NL side of thing, you got Shohei Ohtani, Francisco Lindor of the Mets, and Ketel Marte of the Arizona Diamondbacks are your three finalists there.
You mean Ohtani and two other guys that didn't go 50-50 and almost 60-60?
Right, that's the most.
Well, they're going to be okay. They're going to defend their title with Juan Soto or the guy from Japan. Right?
Roki Sasaki. They're going to throw that in there. I did want to ask you guys, because we didn't get to talk about it, and Craig, I don't know if we're going to bring it up, but we're talking baseball. Did you see the first ballot Hall of Fame, the new ballot for the Hall of Fame this year?
I have not really looked in depth at it, no.
So here are the guys that have a reasonable shot at the Hall of Fame. And I would say it's these top five, although two of them you can maybe throw out. Not Torrey Hunter. He's the fifth year. Ichiro Suzuki, who if he like somebody's going to vote against him because he didn't hit enough home runs, and that would be stupid. Yeah. He's one of the best baseball players in the history of the world.
He should be unanimous, and some curmudgeon, some old dude from like wherever will hold some, like you said. It's like one time Ichiro didn't shake his hand in the post game, and he won't vote for him because that's actually what does happen sometimes in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah. But he absolutely should be undoubtedly a unanimous selection.
He's a slap hitter.
Yeah, it's like somebody will come up with some BS, but he should be unanimous. He probably won't be though, because that's how baseball works.
Yeah. CC Sabathia, who'll be debated a little bit, but I think that he was good enough over his career. He was one of the best in the league. And then here, Felix Hernandez is where it starts to get a little bit. Okay. I mean, King Felix is really great.
Damn, he's already Hall of Fame eligible?
Yeah. Wow. And then these two who are forever joined at the hip, Dustin Pedroia and Ian Kinsler. Ian Kinsler is not a Hall of Famer.
No.
Dustin Pedroia is probably not. I don't think he is. He had an MVP season. He had another one that was close. He was one of the best hitters in the league for his time. I just don't think he played long enough.
Yeah, I don't think either. I don't consider him a Hall of Fame. He's a very good player, though.
Yeah.
Ian Kinsler, that's not even a debate. He is definitely, absolutely, in no way a Hall of Famer. But he's a great addition to the Texas Rangers front office in whatever capacity he's working in. I'm glad to have him around the franchise, but yeah, he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, so Dustin Pedroia, before he had this really severe injury, his WAR for a career 51.9, which is great. He's got 1,800 hits, so that's even below 2,000.
4-time All-Star, 2-time champion. He won an MVP, won a Rookie of the Year, won 4 Gold Gloves. I mean, he's in the Red Sox Hall of Fame. If it was the Yankees Hall of Fame, he's probably in baseball, and that's kind of true.
But I mean, he's 299 career hitter, 140 home runs.
How many hits?
1805. So it's just not. Yeah. He just didn't play long enough, but he was on that pace before he got hurt.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of votes King Felix gets. CC Sabathia as well. As those guys are kind of some of the new names there. But it looks like a lot of guys like Kinsler and Curtis Granderson and Adam Jones, like a lot of pretty good players, but not like Hall of Fame players,
Billy Wagner should get in this year.
Well, I was ready to say, like, the thing is, this is if there's like another note to add on to the Hall of Fame, it is that it's his last year to get into the Hall of Fame, Billy Wagner. So we'll see if he's able to do that. But if not, then that's all she wrote for his Hall of Fame chances. Final couple of things here. Got NFL tonight. Steelers at the Browns on Amazon. 7:15 Central kickoff time there, as Steelers got that big one over the Commanders last week, and now take on Cleveland in a rivalry game. And then also tonight in college football, got one game out in the ACC as Georgia Tech plays host to North Carolina State. That gets started at around 6:30 over on ESPN. So you'll have a couple of games on the gridiron to watch later on tonight. NC State, Georgia Tech in the college, and then Steelers, Browns in the pros. And there's a few things off the radar.
I think CC Sabathia has the stats for 3 or 4 reasons. One, he is a World Series champion the year he played, I guess, with New York. He played with the Yankees a long time, 251 wins in this day and age, 3,000 strikeouts. I think maybe he has more maybe more the stats. He pitched a long, long time, a compiler, but playing in New York as long as he did, he's kind of a personality. Maybe he will get in. That will be fun to see.
This is the Ichiro class, and it's a matter of who joins him.
Yeah.
If anybody joins him, but it's the Ichiro class for sure.
And when we come back, we're not done. Mickey Spagnola covers the Cowboys. They are 3-7. And, man, are they struggling. No question. And it got worse over the weekend. Monday night against the Texans. We'll discuss that with Mickey and more. We appreciate your time. If you have not hit the like button, we'd appreciate that. If you have not subscribed to our channel, we appreciate that. Thank you for your time. We're not done. Mickey is next. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Pioneer Boys. Go to pioneerboys.com for more information. And when you do, you'll see all of what they have since 1943. And there's pictures of what they can build if you want to build something with steel. From metal shops to a beautiful barn-dominium or any type of metal project you have, they are there to have the product you need and also help you with how to put it all together. They have just a phenomenal history, opened their doors in 1943, and now with the facility that's coming up on almost 2 years that they built, which is bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Metal buildings and roofing, the building design they can help you with, the panel options, building components, trim options, and color options, pipe and steel, structural pipe, culverts, structural steel, purlin, tubing, beams, and welding plates, and also sheet and expanded metal, maybe that stays on top of the roof, unlike AT&T Stadium. H-braces and fence posts, welding supplies, more for homes and our farm and ranch, commercial and real estate. PioneerBoys.com.
Hi, I'm Dana Hassel, President and CEO of American Bank. Waco is a great place for business, and for more than 70 years, American Bank has been the bank for business. We continue to invest in our growing community with state-of-the-art branches conveniently located to serve you within minutes. Our experienced bankers, lenders, and decision makers work directly with business owners like you every day, providing tailored solutions, timely answers, and local insights face-to-face. Schedule a meeting with one of our bankers today and find out what makes American Bank the bank for your business. Member FDIC.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
He gets 5 bars on his cell phone, no matter where he is. He has never gotten food on his shirt. He can leap tall buildings in a single bound. But why would anyone need to do that? He is Cesar Leal of Leal's Mexican Restaurant, 9000 Panther Drive in Woodway.
I don't always eat Mexican food, but when I do, I prefer Leal.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, we are taking you to the last part of this show, last part of the hour, 5 o'clock hour. A couple of notes, by the way, that we'll let you know. We'll be back here tomorrow. Craig and I are exhausted because we're having to do 5 consecutive weeks because we had high school football for 11 of the last 12 weeks. But that's out. That's done. At least the games continue, but the team we covered is out. And then next week is, I almost said Valentine's Day. Next week, it's of course, Thanksgiving week. And so there will be some shows in which we won't be on the air. We'll let you know more about that earlier in the week. Do we have Mickey Jack McKenzie?
Yes, we do.
Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com with us on 365 Sports with Craig Paul, and I'm David Smoak. My man, we appreciate it. So they're still mathematically involved. They could run the table, go 10-7. They could even get to 9-8, whatever. But when is there a point you're paying these guys to win? You're paying McCarthy to win. Is there a point, and when would that be, Mickey, based on their record, when you start to worry about getting younger players as if they're not already getting snaps because of injuries more time?
Well, David, I think part of the reasons they're in the situation they're in right now is because they've been using these younger players you're asking for. I mean, if you consider the number of guys that are no more than 3 years in the league, rookies, second-year guys, these guys have been playing for, 4 weeks or so, if you think about it. I don't know who else you could throw in there unless you throw in the towel and act like you don't care about winning and say, okay, Trey Lance, you're the quarterback. But think about it. Think about what they've been doing at the cornerback position with Deron Bland out. They started with Kalen Carson. Then he got hurt. Then they had Amani Oruwariye in there, and then he got hurt and went on injured reserve. They had to go out there this past game or two with Josh Butler, who they signed off the practice squad, and Israel Mukwamu playing in the slot because Jordan Lewis was out. And if you look at the defensive end spot, after Micah Parsons went out and DeMarcus Lawrence went out, they're starting Golston, who's been with them, but he hasn't played that much. And then it was like an all-comers meet outside because Parsons got hurt. Nealon got hurt, who started some games, the rookie. So they're starting 2 rookies at linebacker, by the way. And I count DeMarvion Overshown a rookie. He didn't play last year, right? He suffered the injury. And Maris Leofau, who was their 3rd-round draft choice, he was starting. If you look at the wide receivers after Brandon Cooks went out, Tolbert, who was supposed to be the 3rd receiver, is now 2nd. And then they're using guys like Cavante Turpin, who was a return guy. I mean, I can go on and on and on, along with how they finished the game Monday night when 3/5 of the offensive line was missing, and they had 2 guys in there that barely had played in the NFL and another guy that was a backup. So all these young guys you mentioned, they're playing already.
Mickey, when that metal fell from the roof the other day, was that it was very scary. I know that happened, but was there a feeling of what else can go wrong this year?
I kind of mentioned what's next, right? It just seems like it's always something. If it's not the sun, it's the roof. It's what players said that they got misconstrued what they meant. It's just one thing after another, and then that happens. Good thing it happened, late afternoon before there were a lot of people in the stadium, but still happened. And it's like, gosh, I don't know, between the injuries, those types of things. It made me think, Paul, we had a fire in one of the rooms at training camp, right? One of the player rooms. Mm-hmm. And then when we were going to Vegas for the preseason game, they had problems with the equipment that was going to fly us there coming from DFW. And they had to kind of figure it out to get a plane there for us. And then when we're all getting ready to leave, and that was like an hour and a half delay, Mozzie Smith has the allergic reaction to a peanut substance that he had in a drink. That caused the delay. And now it's Friday rush hour trying to go from Oxnard to LAX. And it took us for a 55-minute drive, maybe like 2 hours and 15 minutes before we got to the plane. So this has been going on all season long. It seems like just weird stuff happening. So I was told, don't ask again what's next.
Yeah, good plan. Good plan, Mickey. Good plan. With this, with Zach Martin going down the other day, that's like a gut punch. Just watching him go through this last year of his contract, him and Tank Lawrence both. Tank's not really played. Zach Martin is a legend, and a future Hall of Famer for sure. Do you think this is Zach's last go-around with the Cowboys and maybe in the NFL? Do you get that feeling?
I think that's a possibility. Now, he mentioned that, I think it was maybe in the offseason, and then everybody jumped on it, and he basically said, I'm worrying about the next game. So it's getting close, if nothing else, but he hasn't committed. But again, and here's another problem with this whole thing, because they signed him to roster bonuses so they could extend his contract out and kind of prorated over a couple more years. Well, they've done it so much that at some point you got to pay the piper, right? It comes due. And if he's not here next year, he's going to still cost $17 million against the salary cap. So we'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, I think that just the injuries he's going through, if it's not an ankle, it's the other ankle, it's the shoulder. They finished, like I said, 3/5 of the offensive line was missing by time they got into the middle of the fourth quarter. And you're playing with guys that, look at it this way. They have 8 guys on the offensive line active, 3 backups. All 3 were in the game. If they had one more injury, they would have had to put a tight end probably at offensive tackle because they had no more backup offensive linemen. That's the depth it came to.
Mickey, are a fake punts. The Cowboys have actually had pretty good success with a lot of things in special teams, and they have the best kicker I've ever seen in my life. Punter is not bad. He's been okay, but the fake punts, is that almost in a way because Mike McCarthy knows they aren't able to move the ball at times any other way, and they're need
trying to steal a possession, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened on that one, if you go back and look at it, the way Houston lined up, they had guys on the outside to hold up the gunners, right? And they had everybody else on the line of scrimmage with their hand on the ground. So, it's one of those things where they got this play set. They see that and they're going, well, we got a pretty easy shot here if we take the personal protector and send them right up the middle because there's no one in the middle of the field and we're going to throw a pass. Well, I don't know if they got suckered into it or the Texans saw something. But one of the guys that was down on the line of scrimmage as if he was going to rush or hold guys up, at the snap, he backed off. And he was the guy that made the tackle on the completion over the middle to Wanye Thomas. So when they saw the look, they didn't call it off because it's like, oh, okay, well, Houston might have outdone them, right? They said, well, we know they like to do things. Let's line up like this and then drop somebody off just in case, because we're not really going to block the punt. And sure enough, that kind of fooled them. But yeah, they were trying. I mean, David, it's the same thing. I think it was not this past game, the week before. Cavante Turpin returned a kickoff 8 yards deep in the end zone, and he got to like the 35 or 40. So what they're trying to do is use that as an offensive play and saying, we got to steal something because this guy is really good. And who knows when they miss a tackle and he goes for a touchdown. So, yeah, I think they're that desperate now offensively that they're going to try things like this just to try to get something that you least expect.
Mickey, obviously the playoffs are not really a realistic thing right now. I mean, they could obviously go on a hot streak, but what do you see them doing with the uncertainty in the coaching staff, which the coaching staff can't worry about? They just have to worry about doing their jobs. Like, what do you expect to see them tweak or do or look at through the rest of these games, especially while they're so banged up, to see what they have to build out for the future?
Well, they're already doing it, Paul.
Yeah.
I think we went over it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what else you can do. I mean, they're signing guys off the practice squad that have never played in the NFL, Josh Butler, and he started. So, and they did the same thing with Owarie. He was on the practice squad. Then they used his 3 elevations and said, okay, we got to sign you to the 53 now. They signed him to the 53, and then he gets hurt. So, yeah, they're already doing this. Now, and look at the tight end position. Jake Ferguson suffers the concussion in the first half. Now he's in concussion protocol. He hasn't played. And they also not only lost him in the game, Hunter Lipke, their second-year starting fullback, who they use a lot, by the way, 20-some snaps a game, either at fullback or kind of like a one back in nickel situations. He misses the game, and they elevated Princeton Fant, who I'm sure you're very aware of his work in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he's out there playing as the third tight end, because the second tight end now is Spain Ford, who was at a rookie free agent, didn't get drafted, right? Now everybody moves up a step. So, yeah, I don't know what else they can tweak because they're playing almost everybody. You know what? Now that you mention this, I'm going to go and look and see how many guys have played so far this year. And I bet it's well into the 60s.
Yeah, they've had a tough year, no question about it. And all right, so Mickey, they're going to play the Washington Commanders, who have had a nice run. They've had a couple of back-to-back losses, and both games absolutely had a chance to win it, but they seem like, I'm not sure if they're running out of gas. Jaden Daniels got dinged up a little bit. He doesn't seem to be playing as confident. They've had a miracle win. They've also had a couple of tough losses. Who do you see in what Dan Quinn now has with Washington?
Well, obviously Jaden Daniels, we can start right there. He's playing awfully well as a rookie, and a guy that, I saw when he first got to LSU. I probably saw most of their games, and he was a guy that, first sign of trouble in the pocket, he's taken off. Well, he's a little bit more patient now, and he's not just kind of running the run. He's looking downfield to throw the ball, and then if he has to, he'll run. And those quarterbacks are always tough to be able to defense. The other thing he's doing is he's not turning over the football. I think he only has 4 interceptions.
Yeah, he's played well. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's played, awfully well, so that's kind of the deal. Defensively, they've been okay. So here's the thing that I noticed, though. So they've got 7 wins. 6 of them right now are against teams with losing records. The best the best one at 4-6 Cincinnati. The other thing is when they played Arizona, which has a winning record, they ended up winning. They had a 1-2 record when they played them. So I'm not saying, oh, well, they haven't played anybody, but the last 2 games, who'd they lose to? 2 teams in first place in their divisions. So to me, they're sort of taking advantage, and I know it's only 3 games, but they're taking advantage of that last place schedule.
I'm going to fight you right now.
Yeah, I know. Because the Cowboys, they got 3 games against teams that 2 of them right now are in first place. So, and I'm not making excuses for the Cowboys because what they're doing right now is paying the price.
Yep.
For not capitalizing on winning the division last year and then losing in the first round of the playoffs. But you still get the first place schedule. And I don't know if this was on purpose to help the last place team from last year or not, but think about it. The Cowboys played Monday night, so they got 6 days between games and got to travel. And the Commanders played on Thursday night, and they got 10 days to play at home.
And I'm glad you brought that up because there have been, at least, Paul, you've heard me say this, there have been, I think, more often than not, Dallas has played at home on the Sunday and then been at home on Thursday.
Not very often.
I'm telling you.
Go back and look.
I will beat you up. We are going to get into it.
This is a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
This is what I do every year.
It's a whole thing.
Listen to this. There were times, and it happened at least twice, and I'm talking within the last 5-6 years, that the Cowboys were on the road on Sunday playing a night game and then having to play Thanksgiving Day.
That's their fault for being popular.
At night.
Yeah, that's their fault. They love being popular. I think they should do that more often.
They shouldn't have volunteered to always have the Thanksgiving Day game.
We also know this, though. Washington is better. Quinn's got them playing well.
Yes.
Their offense has not been scoring as much, in the red zone especially, but they can't beat Dallas. I know they should, and this is a losing record, Dallas, so Washington should win. We know it's just nuts that for whatever reason, Dallas will go out. What's his name? Rush, the quarterback. 53 passes. Rush. He's all lubed up for this game. They will have the best game. CD will make a play early. There'll be a couple of fluky turnovers. Turpin runs back a kick, and they beat Washington, and I will have a miserable Sunday.
And David, you know what? My daddy used to say, a blind squirrel finds an acorn.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, man.
At some point, if you keep losing, you're going to win one, right? It's going to land in your lap some weird way. When they went into the Houston game, I think the Texans, so they had lost 3 of their last 4. And I think if I remember this correctly, in those 4 games, they didn't score any touchdowns in the second half. So what did they do in the second half against the Cowboys? They got a sack fumble that the Cowboys recovered, then fumbled, and they recovered it and picked it up and scored a touchdown.
Yeah, and that was it. Jalen Petrie, former Baylor Bear, by the way,
yes.
is the one that there was the fumble. Guyton picked it up like any big man wants to do. Should have gone down. And then Petrie blows him up, and then, of course, as you said.
The guy that had the sack, ended up with the touchdown. And that's how they broke their streak of no touchdowns in the second half.
Yep, that's right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it very much, as always. Mickey, hey, we will not have next week because it's Thursday, Thanksgiving. I know you'll be at the stadium, so we will give you a week off. Plus, you're in detention. You're in the timeout corner for your thoughts. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Happy Thanksgiving, Mickey Spagnola. Golly, been doing segments with him since the early 90s when the Cowboys were about to make that great run, winning 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. Do we do the Nebraska thing now?
No, I think we have bigger breaking news, and we better.
That's right. I'm the one that said it.
We better get to it because we're not going to be able to bring it up tomorrow.
Okay,
we
should
maybe mention it.
Didn't we see this about a week or so ago that there was a thought that this story right here, megastar quarterback Bryce Underwood was committed to LSU, the number 1 player in the country. there was a thought or report that he was going to switch, and then on his Instagram he said no. He has. He's now going to Michigan. We just talked to Nicole Auerbach about Michigan and the lack of quarterback. They now get their alpha, the number one player in the country, switching from LSU. And Dave Portnoy's money, right?
Yeah, his and I think some other people's too. But, yeah, this is what happened.
He said, yeah.
I like the guy. I think that he's
him.
done some really cool stuff. I just don't want to start giving
I'm
him credit for all this.
Here's the thing. The only crap I would talk is that we have the same job, essentially. I know he's like a CEO and everything. I wish I was successful enough to buy a quarterback for FSU. That'd be great.
This is my whole thing, though. This is John Ruiz.
Yeah.
This is the Texas Tech Cody Campbell. I don't care about boosters. I don't want to know boosters. I don't want to know their names. I don't want them to be like the faces of the program. I know that's going to be impossible with Portnoy because he's ingrained himself so much into Michigan and this right here, so I can only imagine what his timeline probably looks like right now. Great for Michigan. But, I don't want to give him all the credit, although clearly they were making a very public push to go get a QB, and Bryce Underwood was a guy that was definitely circled. So that's a massive commitment for the Wolverines, and the second big quarterback domino to fall today because of Julian Lewis earlier to Colorado. So, we're getting close to signing day. Expect things like this to start bubbling up, and that's two massive decisions made here in the last few hours.
All right, so then let's wait for the Nebraska truth serum tomorrow. All right? Is that okay with you?
I do have another
story.
Another story. I don't know the Nebraska Truth Serum you're even referring to.
Oh, it's
not.
The bowl stuff.
We don't. No, not even that. We don't need to get to it. It's not.
We can wait for tomorrow. You can.
We have
sleep
not
on it.
made fun of anybody's favorite teams this year. Florida State, Oklahoma, or Nebraska. We're going to keep it that way.
We can do that tomorrow. But Texas State has agreed to a new 7-year contract with Coach G.J. Kinne.
Good for him.
The contract averages $2 million per year for 7 years, with the potential for bonuses to add to that, and runs through the 2031 season. So G.J. Kinne, I don't know who they were. Again, I'm happy for him, first of all. But I don't know who Texas State is bidding against. But you're also just going to reward your guys, so I understand that. But this is not the year that they thought it was going to be, so that's why I'm kind of perplexed. Is this is not like the playoff run that people thought might happen. They've dropped, a few games, but I'm thrilled for him. We can all acknowledge this doesn't really mean anything other than he's getting more money for the time being. The 7 years does not matter. But the buyout details will be what matters when it comes to this contract, like any other coach's contract. Yeah. So that's why the length does matter to some degree because of what you'd be buying out. But good for him, good for the Bobcats, and they have a little juice right now, that's for sure.
Will be interesting on what the buyout is. But you're also, maybe they got some intelligence because his name thought that he and Jeff Traylor, among a couple of others, would be the hot names. He's 14-9. But they're also trying to do bigger, better, and wanting to hold on to him. If some alpha comes along, just like with other programs, then that will be interesting to find out what they'd have to pay him.
What alpha is going to come along?
I was going to say
that's the thing.
No,
so, when you look at jobs that are – okay, so taking out the other group of 5 teams, because, at this point, unless it's one of those, like a Boise State or something like that – level, you wouldn't leave Texas State to go to Boise State. That's just not something that would happen.
Jeremiah Dickey's very convincing.
Yeah, Jeremiah Dickey didn't go to Canton High School and Gilmer and
but I'm just
Texas.
saying that if you're going to leave that big contract essentially you just signed, you're going to go someplace that's bigger, right? You're going to make sure that's a big jump. Well, what job in the Big 12? Let's just start there. Is going to be open.
Well, there's not going to be. The only one that would be West Virginia, and they're not going to hire G.J. Kinne most likely. The only job that was even thinkable was Baylor, and they shut that down last week, even though in coaching circles, I'm sure there was probably word already going around of hey, guys, they're not going to fire Dave because of the money for one, but also, they're red hot right now. So once that became official that Baylor wasn't an opening up, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's nowhere for him to go.
Okay, they're 6-4. They're bowl eligible. Last year they were 8-5 in a fun story and beat Baylor. They went through 8 consecutive losing seasons before he arrived, and he's got them on a nice track. But you're right. Yeah,
the guy who's part of that is a red hot OC right now.
Yeah, Jake
for
Spavital.
Baylor.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he didn't have luck there as a head coach. GJ has. But, I think Jake, if he sticks around, I think Spavital is going to get some looks this offseason by teams like Oklahoma, who need an offensive coordinator. But I think that he'd probably be wise to stick it out with the guys that you have and the way that you're rolling right now. You can be a head coach sooner rather than later, but I don't know about going to take another OC job. I think that would be kind of detrimental, especially if it doesn't work out. Seth Luttrell, you see how quickly that can turn.
Yeah.
So, but that's just one example. But, yeah, I think GJ's done a great job. Spavital's been able to, bounce back from that and is red hot again as an OC. He'll be back probably as a head coach in the next few years. But GJ is definitely one of those young, like up and coming, like, ooh, does he have it? And when you turn around Texas State and do stuff that hasn't been done there in a really long time, like that's one of the signs that, like, oh, maybe he's a little bit different. So, yeah, I think we've only heard the beginning of the GJ Kinne December, November coaching stories. I think we got a long way to go there, but that's good for Texas State today. And I do think, he's done enough there to be rewarded, but I also think that there wasn't really much of a threat based on the Baylor job kind of closing up.
Those tweets from the Florida State fan or what were the other fans that said they would like put a corn of cob up,
Yeah.
So there's a
people
Baylor
that
fan.
were using college football to do the stuff they really wanted to do, but try to say, like, I lost a bet.
Yeah, the ones who were real kinky, and they just wanted a reason to do it. So there's a Sawyer Dave Aranda protege Robertson fan, at Daquan Finn fan on Twitter. If Baylor loses to Houston, I will do a push-up for every like on this tweet with proof. And then I said, these things never end well. And immediately a couple of people said he did it last week at West Virginia, which is a little bit dicey. And he came away with that. So now I'm trying to find out 428 likes. So good luck to you. And also with Baylor playing in Houston, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, good luck, Baylor fan.
Do burpees now.
Yeah, right? I don't know your name, so I just refer to you as Baylor fan. But I'm glad that you lived up to your word, and I'm glad that you go like, hey, what can I bet that would get attention and also be fun? Oh, I'll do push-ups. And you didn't go like, hey, I'll stick a corn cob up my backside, because that's what some guys chose to do, was like some just really odd choices of like, all the things you could do. This guy goes push-ups. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other guys are like...
the guy from
those guys are like,
like
taking a
I'll
frozen,
shoot a porn with 5 dudes. It's like, what are you doing? Like,
taking a frozen burrito from Taco Bell.
Yeah, that was a burrito.
Like
I was thinking a corn cob, but like, burrito. Like, it's like, where did that come from? This dude's just doing push-ups. Like, I can respect that.
Yeah. Somebody said, he said that this is going back and forth. So we'll be watching that. I'm going to watch that.
Well,
good luck to you.
Push-ups are a lot safer than like, hey, I'm going to do a snuff film. Like,
I do think, though, that the risky part of that is the fact that Baylor's scoring a lot of points here lately.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the best scoring teams in the country over the last month. So, yeah, that's the only risk. But, hey, obviously
it's every like for the tweet.
Yeah, so it's 428 right now.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah,
so if they lose, they'd have to do 428.
So like if they scored 75 points, it's not like...
Well, that's actually worse than...
that's not...
But it's the likes, not the score.
So like...
It could be 11 to 10.
Yeah, so there's no... like the score, like 75 push-ups, you have to do them in a row. I mean, he could do like... 15 sets of 5 for all he cares.
Yeah, so I was confused there.
Yeah, no.
He actually is making it worse on himself by doing the likes. So, I respect it.
By the way, TexasBeefHouse.com is very close, about 10 or 15 minutes away from wrapping up their most current live auction that runs till about 6:10. I went in there to try to find some fillets and also ribeyes, and went in and got outbid a couple of different times, but it's not over. Go to bidonbeef.com. Look for their logo for TexasBeefHouse.com. That is not over yet. So if you want to jump into that, a lot of you have done, though, and I have too. Paul has with Jack, too. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and the top 5.
Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. It's Thursday. That means one more day for the weekend, if you're that kind of person who enjoys that kind of thing. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use our promo code 365sports. Holidays are coming up. Why don't you serve Wagyu instead of like boring turkey or ham? Wagyu beef, get it there. bitonbeef.com. Top 5 jobs that shockingly won't be open. Number 5, North Carolina. Just yesterday, Mack Brown gave an interview saying he wasn't ready to quit, which is surprising given the fact that the team actually thought he retired after a tough loss to James Madison early this year, where they gave up 70 points. But he's back in the fight, 74 years old next year, ready to keep going. So kind of surprising that didn't happen because most people thought he was going to retire. But this week he's saying he'll be back beyond this season at North Carolina. Number 4, Hugh Freeze. Now, this one's probably the least likely to have happened anyway, but Auburn's not any better than they were last year in year 2 of Hugh Freeze. The quarterback play is terrible. He's supposed to be a QB guru. He bought himself so big that he thought he could make Peyton Thorne a winning quarterback in the SEC. Well, that hasn't happened. They're not very good. They keep losing at home. They've lost to bad teams too. And the Auburn elite don't really do the whole patience thing really well. Just ask Brian Harsin or Tommy Bowden or anybody who's ever coached there. Gus Malzahn, Gene Chizik. I could go on and on and on. They're not patient there. But for Hugh Freeze, looks like he's going to be back. Now, part of it could be, and a lot of this could be, the House settlement, how no one knows how this is going to affect things, and may not be worth firing your coach when you have to share some money with players. Maybe let the buyout go down for a year and then figure it out in 2025 what you want to do with your coach if they're not successful going forward. Number 3, Baylor and Dave Aranda. Look, I'm thrilled that he's staying at Baylor. I think he was the best hire that they could have possibly made in the wake of Matt Rule leaving. Now, he made some incorrect choices recruiting and building the roster. And maybe even with the thank you for the effect, Jack. And maybe even with some other things as well. But he is always willing to correct those things, and that's a coach you need to keep. One that's not going to be dug so down deep into, this is right, I know it'll work. We call that the Jimbos. Like, he does not have the Jimbos. He knew what he was doing was not working. They were not winning games. They were getting destroyed at home. And it's even more shocking that 6 weeks ago, they were 2-4. Now they're 4-4, have a chance to go 8-4 on the way out, and Dave Aranda is running the program how we always kind of thought that he would. They've got talent more than we thought. They've got development more than we thought. And Baylor keeps on winning, and Dave Aranda has kept his job. Number 2, Arkansas. Now, this one could still be a little touch and go, but I think Sam Pittman's done enough, especially bringing in Talon Green from Boise State as the quarterback. He's been an electric player for them. He's still young, so he's only going to get better. The next year, the Bobby Petrino hire offensive coordinator worked. They need to fix the defense, but they have a good young defensive coordinator who will figure it out. And with basketball getting a whole bunch of money, I think Sam Pittman can go knock on the door and be like, hey, you want us to be a little bit better than 500 or a little below 500? Let's start kicking in for football. Oh my gosh, I'm getting verklempt. And number 1, Florida with Billy Napier. After the first month of the season, he was a dead man walking. Now, I think this has less to do with Billy Napier, getting Florida to 500 and navigating the schedule pretty well. It has a little bit to do with DJ Lagway, but mostly it has to do with what's going on at Florida right now. Their former president, former Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, had to retire after we'll just call it a a wee bit of a Florida scandal where he spent a whole lot of the university's money on extravagant things like parties and flights and vacations. And, I'm not going to bore you with the political minutia of it, but they shoved him right out the door. They have an interim president, Scott Strickland's the AD, and they have Billy Napier as coach, with a huge buyout and the House settlement coming. They also have a problem with their basketball coach, Todd Golden, who's been accused of aggravated stalking, one of the more strange controversies with a coach ever. So Todd Golden might have, in a weird way, given Billy Napier a reprieve, but I would say if things don't get better next year at Florida, they're going to have a new basketball coach, a new football coach, a new AD, and they'll certainly have a new president because the interim president was the former president that has been enjoying retirement for the last 3 years and is just coming to step back in to do them a favor. So, Billy Napier, reprieve, but not completely off the hot seat. He has to do better. He has to make this DJ Lagway thing count for the Gators to keep him 2025 and beyond. That's going to do it for this episode of the Top 5. The principal lets us out of detention right after this.
I will paddle you like I did Mickey if you're not careful. I was sitting there as you were wrapping up the Top 5, writing the liner promo for 365 Sports Tonight, and I saw a note in the chat room. Hey, would you guys mind talking about a good replacement for Dave Aranda and if Jamie Chadwell would fit the culture and system? That was just like a month ago. And how things have changed because a month ago, you didn't know how this team was going to end.
Look, Jamie Chadwell, superfan here. I someone who doesn't want him to coach at Liberty anymore. I would love it if he came here. I would love it, but it's not going to happen, so we don't have to worry about it. So,
all right,
it's not going to happen, and they're fine. They're not that good.
Yeah.
They're 7-2, which at Liberty with that schedule is actually pretty bad.
And one of was to Kennesaw State, who hadn't won.
The worst team in the entire country.
Yeah.
So, that was a terrible, horrific loss. Their 7-2 is not everybody else's 7-2, and I'm not being like the SEC guy here. It's like, no, our loss. No, it's like, no, really, they play a pitiful schedule.
And they have an AD who loves that.
Yeah. No, that's by design. But, it's Dave Aranda closing up that speculation has done a world of good for a lot of people.
It's kind of nice. All right, Jack McKenzie, I might have to make a pot of jambalaya just for him for his work today doing yeoman's work. Garrett will be back with us tomorrow. We'll all three be here tomorrow. Don't get used to it, all right?
Will
on
Garrett
Fridays.
Ross be here?
He will.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good, because then we could talk about Bryce Underwood with the big LSU fan, and also the fact that Steve Wiltfong's already predicting their 4-star wide receiver, Derek Meadows, to now flip to Michigan as well. So the LSU meltdown is it's gearing up, folks. So.
Jack, well, no, it is. And the Brian Kelly, David Hellman just posted something about Brian Kelly, and, he's a huge LSU fan, as is Brian Broaddus, a former Cowboy scout. For Jack McKenzie, for all of everybody else, Emery, who's working already on 365 Sports Tonight at 10:30 on the CW, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, those of you in the chat, it was good to see all the new Buffaloes fans from Colorado, some of them. Oh, my God, it was fun to watch today, I think. Also, thanks to our great sponsors, I'm David Smoak. Enjoy your night. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, 365 Sports.